Chapter 661. In the bright and beautiful sky, the figure suddenly disappeared from everyone's sight. Bai Changchun landed on the ground and stared at the rolling green eyebrows. As soon as the latter saw the person standing in front of him, even though he was in pain, he crawled up, knelt down and kowtowed. He begged again and again. "It's me who failed to recognize you. Great immortal, please spare my life. Please spare my life." There were at least dozens of holes on his hands, legs and body. Black blood kept flowing out of his body, so he was lucky to be alive. However, looking at his skillful kowtowing, it really made everyone's eyes pop out. There was no trace of his previous arrogant and domineering appearance. Bai Changchun stared at him coldly and said indifferently, "Compared to the guy 200 years ago, you are far inferior. He still had the strength to fight with me, but you can't even withstand a single blow. At the same time, there is a problem that I have been thinking about for more than 200 years. Let's talk about you. Your cultivation is obviously not as good as mine, but we set off from the demon ghost region at the same time, and I can't catch up with you in terms of speed. I'm very puzzled. Can you explain it to me?" Yes, yes, yes. Green Eyebrows nodded repeatedly, crawled on the ground, and hurriedly replied, "As long as great immortals spare my life, I will tell you the truth." "Are you bargaining with me?" Bai Changchun said indifferently. I dare not, I dare not." Green Eyebrows hurriedly kowtowed. He could feel the killing intent in the other party's words. Bai Changchun snorted coldly. "If you don't answer, die. If I'm not satisfied with your answer, die." I'll tell you. Green Eyebrows' face was covered with black blood, but it still couldn't hide the horror on his face. He said in a trembling voice, "Although I don't know why, with great immortals' cultivation, you should have ascended to the immortal realm long ago. Otherwise, the flesh and blood of the human world can't bear such a strong cultivation like great immortal. The passage to the immortal realm has the effect of refining the body. It was only during the process of ascending that a new body was forged that it could withstand a stronger cultivation, and thus continue to climb to the peak of cultivation. This is just like the netherworld fire on the way to the underworld, which can also refine a new body for ghost cultivators in the human world. This is also why the cultivators of the mortal world are often inferior to the cultivators of the immortal world and the netherworld. Of course you are an exception, great immortal." Bai Changchun nodded thoughtfully and said to himself, "So that's how it is. I understand now. So it was my body that restricted the use of my cultivation. I had noticed this a long time ago. No wonder. Unfortunately, no one has been able to go to the immortal world yet, not even me." Lu Mei, who was prostrating at the side, raised her bloody face and asked weakly, "Great immortal, can you let me go now?" Bai Changchun met his pitiful pleading gaze and asked expressionlessly, "If I kill you, do you think the underworld will send a stronger person?" "Ah!" Green Eyebrows screamed like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Great immortal, please don't kill me. If you kill me, Madame Blackpool will know immediately. She has many experts under her command, and will definitely send experts from the underworld to trouble you. I am just a nobody in the underworld. Great immortal, you don't have to offend Madame Blackpool for me. When I go back, I will erase the matter of the gate of the underworld in front of Madame Blackpool. I guarantee that no one from the underworld will come to the mortal world to trouble you. Great immortal, please think twice." Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Nongzhu shook her head and sighed, thinking, "You are such an unlucky guy. Why did you have to say that Madame Blackpool has many experts under her command? If I kill you, she will send experts from the underworld to trouble me. It will be strange if Crazy Ol doesn't kill you. If you say that you will send experts to trouble Crazy Ol after you go back, Crazy Ol will let you go immediately." As expected, Bai Changchun's eyes lit up. He stared at Lu Mei and asked, "When people from the underworld come to the mortal world, do they all come out from the place where you came from?" Lu Mei was stunned. She didn't know what he meant, but to save her life, she answered honestly, "Yes, that is the passage from the underworld to the mortal world." Bai Changchun nodded slightly and said, "In that case, I only need to stay at the entrance of the cave to wait for the experts from the underworld to come out. Since I can't go to the underworld, this is a good idea." Lu Mei's small eyes suddenly opened wide. He would be an idiot if he still didn't understand what Ning Ke meant. Before he opened his mouth to beg for mercy, Bai Changchun waved his sleeve. Bang! Ah! Green Eyebrow screamed and flew into the air. When he fell, several sharp lights shot out from Bai Changchun's fingers. After a few swishes, Lu Mei was cut into several pieces and fell down. Before people could react, a shadow flew across the sky and disappeared in the direction of the demon ghost region. Bai Changchun left just like that? People looked at each other and felt that what happened just now was like a dream. However, the completely destroyed treasure bowl in front of them clearly told them that it was true. In the distance, the dozens of pieces of the giant snake and Lu Mei's body began to squeak and emit black smoke under the scorching sun. Under people's gazes, they soon became pools of black juice. This was the result of Bai Changchun's battle. However, when they thought of Bai Changchun's miraculous means just now, they all shuddered. He was too powerful. Especially the conversation between Bai Changchun and the Netherworld envoy. It exposed a very important piece of information. Bai Changchun's cultivation had long surpassed the soul formation stage. At the same time, people also learned the secret of why the people of the immortal world and the underworld were stronger than the cultivators of the human world. The entire treasure bowl had almost all traces of its creator erased. Only the remnants of the God of Wealth Peak were left. At the top of the God of Wealth Peak, Sikong Ju and Jing Yuankong were kowtowing in the direction that Bai Changchun disappeared in, thanking the benefactor who avenged their master. The two of them had to fulfill the instructions left behind by this benefactor. If they didn't, he said that there was no need for the world commerce to exist. No one doubted his words in the past, and no one doubted his words now. After a long time, the two of them slowly stood up. The two of them faced the breeze and looked down the mountain. Not long ago, their master In Bai Kong would often stand on the mountain peak and look down, looking at the foundation that he had single-handedly built. At the foot of the mountain, the various lords summoned their inner sect disciples to dig out their belongings from the ruins. Then, they dispersed without any obstruction, because the defensive formation that In Bai Kong had personally set up had been completely destroyed. It could no longer stop anyone. Seeing the people leaving, the two of them looked at each other with complicated gazes. No matter if it was because of the old grudges or the new grudges because of the 7 treasure pill, no one would find trouble with them anymore. Although the pillar of the world commerce was no longer here, the words that Bai Changchun had left behind were enough to intimidate everyone. As long as Bai Changchun was still here, no one in the cultivation world would dare to find trouble with the world commerce. Sikong Ju raised the God of Wealth sword in his hand. The two of them looked at each other silently. In the past, their master had always wanted to curry favor with Bai Changchun to ensure the safety of the world commerce. Who would have thought that not only would he not be able to fulfill this wish when he was alive, he would be able to fulfill it after his death. Some things that happened due to fate were often fated in the unseen world. It really couldn't be forced. Junior brother. How about we work together to revive the world commerce? Of course. Other than completing Senior Bai's instructions, just like what Senior Bai said, the world commerce is Master's life's work. But I'm worried. The day of the East Holy Land's opening isn't far away. I'm afraid that we won't be able to fulfill our wish. Master once told me. Sikong Ju looked at Jing Yuankong and said solemnly, the past torture envoys of the demon ghost region were all outstanding figures. If one left, another would appear. The demon ghost region had been passed down from ancient times until now. Who knows how many secrets it had? No one dared to take it lightly. Not to mention anything else, just the countless demon kings and ghost kings in the demon ghost domain were the most powerful force in the world. They could easily wipe out any force in the cultivation world. Although the past torture envoys of the demon ghost region didn't easily interfere with the matters of the cultivation world, the demon ghost region was the true #1 power in the cultivation world. Since Senior Bai had spoken, even if he left, no one in the cultivation world would dare to touch the world commerce. Of course, the prerequisite is that we follow Senior Bai's words. That's good. We can do business in peace and cultivate in peace. We don't have to be afraid of being disturbed. I'm going to recall the people from the limitless island. The world commerce shouldn't interfere with the matters of the cultivation world anymore. Sikongju asked. What do you think? Jing Yuankong nodded and said, I agree. Sikongju didn't say anything else. He began to gather the disciples of the world commerce to clean up the things that belonged to the sect. Now that Yin Baikong was dead, Jing Yuankong didn't fight with him anymore. He naturally became the new leader of the world commerce. At the foot of the mountain, after the Blue Palace disciples finished cleaning up the ruins, Pei Fong waved his hand and let them go. He stood with Qi Jiujuan and Ouyangda. Looking at the devastation, the three of them looked at each other and sighed. Although the trouble this time was caused by the underworld envoy, the three of them couldn't help but associate it with Bai Changchun. Every time that old monster appeared, he would do something shocking. In fact, didn't the underworld envoy come to find him? They really hoped that he wouldn't appear again. Pei Fong glanced at Wen Lanfeng and the others who were still standing at the edge of the mountain and said to the two beside him, Let's say goodbye to them before we leave. The three of them quickly went to Wen Lanfeng and the others. Pei Fong cupped his hands and said, Everyone will take our leave now. We welcome you to visit the Blue Palace if you have the chance. He deliberately smiled at Furong and said, Miss Furong, if there's anything you need my help with in the future, please don't hesitate to ask. Just find a disciple of the Blue Palace to pass on the message. I'll do my best. Furong smiled and nodded. Then, she heard Nongju sneer and say, Fatty Pei, there's something I don't understand and I need to ask you. You said that the strange green-robed man was fooled by Yu Qianqiu. Why did he suddenly turn against him when he was about to leave? Yes, I also find this strange. Pei Fong shook his head with a puzzled expression, appearing to be in disbelief. The others knew that Nongju wouldn't say such a thing for no reason. Even Qi Jiujuan and Ouyangda looked at Pei Fong suspiciously. Maybe the people of the underworld have some supernatural power that we don't know about. Pei Fong sighed and cupped his hands, saying, Everyone farewell. After saying that, he flew into the sky. Qi Jiujuan and Ouyangda also cupped their hands and left. Nongju snorted and tilted her head to look at Yu Qianqiu. She believed that with Yu Qianqiu's cunning, he should be able to understand the meaning of her words. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu would turn a deaf ear to him? His eyes were fixed on the ruins. Just when the group was baffled, Yu Qianqiu suddenly let out a loud cry and rushed into the ruins of the broken fences and dilapidated walls. Chapter 662. Stones and broken wooden beams were thrown all over the sky by someone. Yu Qianqiu was working hard in the ruins with a hard-working spirit that was incomparable to ordinary people. But no matter how they looked at him, he seemed to be possessed by a demon. When Lanfeng and the others looked at each other, all the sects were digging up their own treasures and disciples who were killed in the war. What was he digging up like a madman? This guy had a lot of treasures. Was he hiding them in that place? Nongju raised his eyebrows and touched his chin, pondering. A sinister smile appeared on his face. He looked around and vaguely recognized that the place Yu Qianqiu was digging seemed to be the original location of the Spring Slumber building. The sinister smile on his face froze. Looking at Ziyi, who was curious and eager to try, Nongju suddenly looked gloomy. He kind of understood what Yu Qianqiu was looking for. Except for him, perhaps only Lu Yanqing, who was wearing a gauze hat, understood. They could not help but flashed over. Yu Qianqiu buried his head in his work. Each time he dug up a corpse, he would immediately clean up the corpse's face. When he saw that it wasn't the person he was looking for, he didn't care about the consequences and directly threw it away. You're crazy, Nongju shouted angrily. As soon as he flew over, he happened to catch a female corpse that Yu Qianqiu threw behind, and he also threw it behind. As a result, he almost hit a disciple of another sect. How dare someone hit me with a corpse? The disciple was also angry. He straightened up and was about to curse, but his mouth was covered by his fellow disciples. He pointed at Nongju and the others. The disciple immediately lost his temper and went to do what he was supposed to do. Yu Qianqiu picked up a wooden beam several meters long, turned around and threw it away. He stared at Nongju with a sullen face and said in a low voice, "Don't provoke me." He wiped his face with his dirty sleeve and continued to bury himself in the work. That scene made people feel an inexplicable sadness. They didn't know what he was trying to do to make himself look so miserable. Nongju's face was immediately drawn, and she was about to burst into rage. Ze, who wanted to join in the fun and dig for treasures, quickly stopped. Furong walked over and asked weakly, "What are you digging? Let me help you." Just as Yu Qianqiu raised his head and was about to reply, his eyes inadvertently fell on a group of people in front of him, and he was instantly stunned. The enchantress Yin Yu Tianyi, Mo Xiaojun, Hai Wei, and Li Qiuxiang came together. The six of them saw that he was covered in dirt. He was half-straightened, one hand holding onto a broken window, the other holding onto an arm that was buried under the collapsed wall, and he was looking at them with his dusty face. "Yu Qianqiu, what are you looking for?" 100 Charm Beauty asked in confusion. Yu Qianqiu's gaze swept over Yin Yu before he quickly shifted it away. There seemed to be some panic in his eyes. He let go of the arm that was holding the dead body and threw the broken window as far as he could. He stood up and patted off the dust on his palms. He assumed a confident posture and waved his hand to point at the busy crowd around him. "I'm a kind-hearted person. Everyone else is working, but I'm just standing at the side. I feel bad about it, so I've come to lend a hand." "Really?" 100 Charm Beauty looked doubtful, as if she did not believe what he said. She looked around, but did not find any clues. "Of course." Yu Qianqiu nodded with an honest face. However, Furong, who was beside him, believed what he said very much. She pulled his sleeve and said seriously, "I will also help you." Yu Qianqiu's face twitched, and he said awkwardly, "Forget it. It's fine as long as we have the intention. We can help people for a while, but we can't help them forever. Let's call it a day. We'll talk about it later." After that, he wiped the dust off his buttocks with both hands. It seemed that he was going to quit. Furong nodded and said, "Oh." Suddenly an uncontrollable laughter came from the side. The few of them turned their heads to look and discovered that it was Lu Yanqing. When Lanfeng asked curiously, "Yanqing, what are you laughing at? Did you think of something funny?" Lu Yanqing quickly shook her head and said, "Nothing." "Humph. Stubborn duck." Nongju sneered with a face full of disdain. He finally knew that when it came to this kid, he could say anything that was horizontal, straight, and dead. In short, he was the one who was in the right. "Hey, Yin Yu, what are you laughing at?" 100 Charm Beauty suddenly found that Yin Yu was also biting her lips and laughing. Yin Yu immediately waved her hand and said, "Nothing." But anyone could see that she was smiling from the bottom of her heart. Her face was bright, and she stood in the ruins, looking unusually dazzling. Everyone present was stunned. Yu Qianqiu naturally knew what she was laughing at, but he was thick-skinned and didn't care, as if he didn't know anything. "What can you do to me?" When Lanfeng looked at both sides and couldn't see why the two women were laughing, so he asked Nongju, "Nongju, what's your plan?" Nongju looked up at the ruins of the God of Wealth Peak and said, "Everyone in the cornucopia parted on bad terms. I naturally want to go to Shuntian Island and ask Old Bai how many secrets he has that I don't know. It turns out that the guy's cultivation has surpassed the soul formation stage. He actually hid it from me for so many years. I've long felt that his cultivation shouldn't be at the soul formation stage. He's too strong." When Lanfeng smiled bitterly and shook her head, she then asked Yu Qianqiu, "What about you?" Nongju also took Ze and Furong away, leaving Yu Qianqiu standing alone in the ruins and looking around. Later, he flew alone to the primeval forest outside the treasure basin. In the back hall of the Dark Nether Palace, Lady Blackpool was still lying naked in the hot spring, being served by 5 handsome and strong pampered men. In the hazy water mist, Lady Blackpool was so comfortable that she closed her eyes and kept moaning under the massage of 10 big hands. At this moment, hurried footsteps came from outside the black veil. They came to the side of the bath made of black jade and stopped. It seemed that they didn't dare to disturb her. "Why are you in such a hurry? Is the Minghuang mountain going to collapse?" Lady Blackpool snorted and said, "If you have something to say, just say it." Maid Feifeng immediately replied, "Lumei's memorial tablet is broken. I've asked the guards of the underworld, but Lumei hasn't come back." After that, She didn't say another word. Her slightly closed phoenix eyes suddenly opened. Her eyes flashed for a while, and a majestic momentum directly shook away the 5 pampered men around her. Lady Blackpool disappeared in the hot spring. The black dress on the clothes rack beside the hot spring dashed up and hovered above the hot spring, wrapping her naked body in the dress. Lady Blackpool, who was floating above the hot spring, glanced at Fei Fing and suddenly turned into a beam of black light and flew away. She dashed out of the dark nether palace like a shooting star, heading directly to the towering dark royal palace. The serene wood forest had branches but no leaves. As soon as the black light entered the dark serene wood forest, a silver light flashed in front of the small building surrounded by the serene wood forest. The commander of the royal guards of the dark royal palace appeared at the same time. The commander of the royal guards of the dark royal palace stared at Lady Blackpool indifferently and disdainfully, saying indifferently, "Blackpool, if you dare to take one more step forward, I don't mind kicking you out of the dark royal palace." Lady Blackpool bit her lips and stopped on her knees, saying, "Greetings, Lord Silver Armor. Please tell the Emperor of the Underworld that Blackpool has something important to report." After she learned that the Silver Armor commander of the Dark Royal Guards was one of the legendary 12 underworld generals of the underworld, she didn't dare to act presumptuously in front of the Silver Armor commander of the Dark World, no matter how unhappy she was. She knew that the Silver Armor commander of the Dark Royal Guards had the ability to deal with her. Chapter 663. The indifferent eyes of the soldier in silver armor were startled a bit. It was obvious that he didn't expect Madame Blackpool to kneel down to him. Perhaps the sincerity of Madame Blackpool had moved the underworld emperor. A dignified and calm voice drifted out from the small building. "Say it outside." A few large fireflies flew up from the tree trunks of the deepwood forest and clung to the window of the small building. Madame Blackpool raised her head and saw a man with a noble and elegant temperament appear at the window under the flickering light. His penetrating gaze passed through the deepwood forest and gazed at the night sky in the distance. Then he slowly looked down. His gentle gaze revealed an unconcealable majesty and indifference, giving people a startling feeling. It was a majesty that seeped out from his bones. "Greetings, Underworld Emperor." Madame Blackpool bowed and said, "Get up and talk." Though the Underworld Emperor said it politely, he didn't mean to let her in. "Thank you, Underworld Emperor." As soon as Madame Blackpool stood up, the Underworld Emperor asked her in a condescending manner, "What's the matter?" Madame Blackpool reported angrily, "Underworld Emperor, something terrible has happened. The Underworld envoy I sent to the human world to investigate the stolen item from the gate of the Underworld was killed in the human world." Before Madame Blackpool could finish, the Underworld Emperor interrupted her. "You came to disturb me for this matter?" Madame Blackpool was taken aback, and the anger on her face cooled down. She said angrily, "The mortals in the human world are outrageous. They dared to kill the Underworld envoy. Blackpool asks the Underworld Emperor to send someone to punish the murderer." The fireflies that were climbing on the window suddenly flew away quickly, as if they were frightened by something. It became dark outside the window. Though there was light in the room, no one could see the expression of the person outside the window. All they could see was a figure with a pair of cold eyes flickering. He said in a deep voice, "Blackpool, do you remember what I said when I agreed to send someone to the underworld?" Madame Blackpool was startled. She sensed the anger in the Underworld Emperor's words. She knelt down again and said, "Blackpool doesn't dare to forget it. The Underworld Emperor said that this is the only time. No matter what the result is, it is not allowed to happen again." "What else?" asked the Underworld Emperor. If it happens again, you don't have to serve me anymore. You should go to the endless dark sea to serve those laborers." It's good that you remember," the Underworld Emperor said emotionlessly. "If you are tired of staying in the dark nether palace and want to go to the endless dark bottom to enjoy yourself, I will grant you your wish. Emperor of the Underworld, please calm down. I won't dare to do it again." Madame Blackpool bowed on the ground in fear. "It's good that you understand. If there's nothing else, you can leave," the Underworld Emperor said. "Underworld Emperor, there is one more thing." Heichi straightened his back and said, The celestial realm sent someone to contact me. They said something strange happened in one of the 72 worlds. Countless years have passed, and no one from that world ascended to the celestial realm. Thus he sent down 16 guides to investigate, but none of them returned. Recently, someone from that realm sounded the immortal ascension bugle, but there's still no news of the people they sent out, and they haven't returned. What do you want to say to me? The underworld emperor asked icily. Madam Heichi said respectfully. They suspect that there might be something wrong with the passage to that world, and they want me to ask the underworld emperor to lend me the passage to the underworld. Heichi, you are from the underworld. When did you become the messenger of the celestial realm? The underworld emperor turned around and walked away from the window. His indifferent voice drifted out from the room. Them? Which them? Do they have the right to negotiate with me? Go back and tell them that they don't have the right to talk to me. Tell Jintai to come and talk to me in person. 1,000 soldiers. No one is allowed to trespass this place without my permission. Yes. The silver armor 1,000 soldiers cupped his hands and accepted the order. Then he waved at Madame Heichi to send her away. Heichi was frightened by the underworld emperor's words. When did you become the messenger of the celestial realm? She knew the underworld emperor didn't like the people of the celestial realm. Though she didn't know the reason, she knew she had misspoken this time. The underworld emperor deprived her of the right to trespass this place. She wanted to explain, but she didn't dare to say anything else. She knelt and kowtowed, saying, Heichi will remember. Heichi will leave now. Then she turned into a black light and left. After she left, the silver armor 1,000 soldiers appeared on the small building. The underworld emperor, who was holding the ancient scroll, said without turning his head. What kind of person did she send to the human world this time? How could he be killed by a cultivator in the human world? The silver armor 1,000 soldiers relaxed when no one was around. He walked to the underworld emperor's side and took out an ancient scroll from the bookshelf. He opened it and said, A pampered man called Lu Mei. He was just a clown trying to please the crowd. His cultivation level was not worth mentioning. He was only a mid-stage netherworld warrior. The underworld emperor tilted his head and said, The mid-stage netherworld warrior is not worth mentioning. But don't forget that it was the human world. How high do you think the mortal body of a cultivator in the human world can withstand? This person is not simple to kill a mid-stage netherworld warrior. The silver armor 1,000 soldiers was startled. He put the ancient scroll back on the bookshelf and said with a frown, Now that you mention it, it is a bit strange. I didn't expect such a person to appear in the human world. Should I go there myself and see who did it? It's not the right time. Let's talk about it later. The underworld emperor shook his head slightly. In the middle of Huaxia, in a deep mountain not far from a bustling city, there was a mountain god temple that was full of incense. In front of the temple, there was an endless stream of people who came from the city to burn incense and pray devoutly. Behind the temple, there was a quiet wing built halfway up the mountain. Standing on the platform in front of the wing, one could see the crowd of people coming and going to worship at the foot of the mountain. Under the shade of the trees, Yu Qianqiu quietly looked at the mountain god temple with green smoke curling up. He said with a smile, You two are really good at picking a place. I didn't expect you two would hide here and enjoy the human world. Gu Qingyin and Hong Qi stood on either side of him. Hong Qi had grown into a mature young man after not seeing him for a few years. Hong Qi said with a smile, This is a rundown temple. If we didn't take over it, it wouldn't be so full of incense. I heard that the Hong Gang and Qing Gang suddenly appeared in the Huaxia cultivation world. I know it's the two of you. Yu Qianqiu looked around and joked. You two are really famous, Hong Qi said with an embarrassed smile. How can we be as famous as you, master? We're just making a small ruckus in the Huaxia cultivation world. We only managed to make a ruckus by taking advantage of the trouble on Wuji Island. Otherwise, we would have been wiped out by the righteous and demonic sections. But master, you're famous all over the world. I heard that you're the #1 expert below the soul formation stage. I'm honored. I haven't seen you for a few years, and you've learned how to be glib. Looks like you've gotten a lot of benefits. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and stared at Gu Qingyin. How is it? It's freer than you on that Fuxian island, right? Gu Qingyan smiled and joked. At least I don't have to bow and bow all day like I did on Fuxian Island. I'm now the leader of the world-famous Qing gang. I'll rob anyone who dares to mess with me. He had been living in the outside world for so many years, and had accepted many things. It was just like what Yu Qianqiu said. If he was still on Fuxian Island, he might not be able to break through to the core formation stage. Hongqi laughed and said, That's right. Fuxian Island is nothing. Sect leader Feng Xiangtian has sent invitations to us in the cultivation world several times. But we've been too lazy to care. So what if we're the #1 sect in the world? Gu Qingyan rolled his eyes and said mockingly, Don't be so arrogant here. Do you think Feng Xiangtian is so easy to mess with? If it wasn't for Wuji Island, he would have come to destroy us a long time ago. You haven't stayed on Fuxian Island, so you don't know. Fuxian Island is very powerful. To be able to dominate the cultivation world for so many years, there must be many hidden experts in the late stage of tribulation passing. Hongqi said disapprovingly, What are you afraid of? With Master's current reputation, we can just use Master's name at the crucial moment. I don't think Fuxian Island will dare to act rashly against us. The two of them glanced at each other, then looked at Yu Qianqiu and chuckled. They indeed had a sense of superiority. All the sects in the cultivation world were worried that they would be attacked by the spirit-severing experts of the various countries, and lived in fear. On the other hand, they had the foundation laid by Yu Qianqiu in the various countries. They didn't have to worry about anything. When they had nothing to do, they could rob others and live like kings. Gu Qingyan asked curiously, Boss, why did you suddenly come to find us? Yes, Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, I heard that almost all the independent cultivators in the cultivation world listen to your orders. I also heard that you guys are quite a deterrent to the small sects of the righteous and demonic Tao. So, I came to find you two to ask for your help. Hongqi asked curiously, With Master's ability, do you still need our help? Yu Qianqiu glared at him and looked into the distance. Soon, the millions of soldiers that have been occupying the western region of the cultivation world for a long time will march out and conquer the entire cultivation world. You two keep a close eye on those sections. If anyone dares to interfere, teach them a lesson. Don't be polite, I'll take care of it. The two looked at each other. They knew that Shi Wenguang was Yu Qianqiu's man, but they didn't expect them to collude and make preparations to conquer the world. Gu Qingyan frowned and said, We can barely deal with those small sects, but those large sects. Boss, to be honest, we can't stop them. I'll give each of you 1,000 men from the Utopia army. Yu Qianqiu turned around and stared at the two of them. You don't have to worry about those large sections. I'll deal with them. Is there any problem? Their eyes lit up. They naturally knew the power of the Utopia army. Hongqi asked weakly, Master, are they all early-stage tribulation transcendence experts? Yu Qianqiu nodded. Hongqi immediately rubbed his hands excitedly and said, No problem at all. Master, when will you give us that person? I'll give him to you now. Prepare early, Yu Qianqiu said. The two of them excitedly led him deep into the mountains. Chapter 664. At the western border of Huaxia, there was a culture and customs of a foreign land, with merchants from all over the world coming and going. In the hundreds of miles of barracks at the border, the army trained day in and day out. For many years, the army had been in a state of constant preparation for war. Yu Qianqiu quietly appeared at the back of the main tent. When the cultivators he sent saw him, they were surprised at first, then happy, but when they wanted to salute him, he waved his hand to stop them. Gently pulling the curtain aside, he saw Shi Wenguang and his son sitting around the table, gesturing with their hands to draw a map. Just as Yu Qianqiu was about to step out, he suddenly heard Shi Yintian muttering, Father, are we really going to keep waiting like this? The army has been training like this for a long time. Everyone will get tired. It's not good for the morale of the army. Shut up, Mr. You will naturally have arrangements. Shi Wenguang signaled to the back of the tent with his eyes, hinting him not to speak carelessly. There were still people sent by Yu Qianqiu. Then he said in a low voice, Don't think I don't know. You've been secretly sending a group of people back to the capital. What are you planning? I knew I couldn't hide it from father. Sir Tian smiled bitterly. I've sent people back to spy on the situation, to see if there's a chance to bring everyone back. Our family has been separated for too long. It's not a good idea to continue like this. Shi Wenguang also sighed and shook his head. It's easier said than done. The imperial court has probably sent people day and night to keep an eye on them. Even if they can escape from the capital, it's a long journey, and there's also a heavy military presence. How can they make it? I'm afraid we can only ask for Mr. Yu's help. Yu Qianqiu smiled, opened the curtain and walked out. The day of the Grand General's family reunion is not far away. The father and son looked over, and when they saw him, they were overjoyed and cupped their hands together. Greetings, Mr. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand at them, indicating that there was no need to be so polite, then looked at them carefully. Perhaps it was because of the hardships at the border. Shi Tian already had the image of a middle-aged man. On the other hand, Shi Wenguang was still healthy and strong. Even after a few years, there were still no signs of aging on his face, most likely due to the pills. Yu Qianqiu's eyes finally landed on Shi Tian, smiling. Looks like the young general can't wait any longer, and is eager to reunite with his family. Shi Wenguang was slightly startled, knowing that Yu Qianqiu had heard his son's grumbling. He hastily cupped his hands in apology and said, It's all my son's fault. He's insensible and full of nonsense. Please forgive him. Great General, you think too much. Who doesn't want their family to be reunited? This is human nature. What crime is there? After saying that, Yu Qianqiu walked to the entrance of the tent with his hands clasped behind his back, and looked at the soldiers training outside. Amidst the deafening battle cries, he nodded in satisfaction. The father and son followed behind. Shi Wenguang asked, Just now, Mr. said that the day of my family reunion is not far away. What does Mr. mean? Yu Qianqiu suddenly turned around and strode to the commander's seat in the center. He stared at the two and asked, If I let you make sufficient preparations before the battle, how long would it take for you to finish? The father and son looked at each other, understanding the meaning behind Mr. Grand General's words. Their eyes were filled with surprise. Shi Tian could not wait to answer. Half a month is enough. Yu Qianqiu frowned, staring at Shi Wenguang. Grand General, you are an expert in war, but you can't afford to rush. I'll give you a month to prepare. Is that enough? Shi Tian immediately knew that he was being too impulsive. Shi Wenguang also glared at him, then replied, Actually, we have always been preparing. It's just a small battle. The army can be mobilized at any time. If it's a big battle, it will take some time. But a month's time difference is not bad. Good. Then I'll give you a month's time. A month later, I will bring your family back safely on time. Yu Qianqiu looked out of the tent and waved his hand. Time doesn't wait for me. 1 month later, the army will march east. I will not directly intervene in the war between mortals, nor will I let other cultivators interfere. I've given you a chance. When the time comes, let's see if your Shi family has the ability to change the dynasty of Huaxia and earn your Shi family's eternal inheritance. After waiting for so many years, the day had finally arrived. The father and son were so excited that they could not speak, and they bowed to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu stood at the top of a lush tree in the depths of a mountain forest. In front of him was a large manor that was connected together. Behind the manor was a huge waterfall. The rushing water split into two along the river, circling around the manor on both sides before merging into a single river and going far away. This huge manor was like a paradise. It was none other than the Wu clan, one of the 4 major clans that Yu Qianqiu had not set foot in for many years. Above his head, there were cultivators flying past, some alone, some in pairs, and some in groups of 3 to 5, rising and landing on the Wu clan's Hat Island. No one would pay attention to a cultivator who looked relatively young. Even if they occasionally saw him, they would just quickly pass by, not bothering to pay attention. When separating from Gu Qingyan, Yu Qianqiu mentioned that he was going to the Wu clan, and Gu Qingyan immediately informed him that the Wu clan's grand auction that was held once every 5 years was about to be held. Looking at the bustling scene deep in the old forest in front of him, Yu Qianqiu sighed endlessly. Time passed so quickly, he did not expect that 3 auctions had passed in the blink of an eye. These years had been spent in a busy manner, and it suddenly felt like only 2 or 3 years had passed. But looking back, it had been 15 years since he first came here. He still remembered when he was in Swallow City. He joined on Kwangsung because of a jade pendant. The past was still vivid in his mind, and counting with his fingers, it had been more than 20 years since he stepped into the cultivation world. In this way, he seemed to be in his early 40s, but in the cultivation world, 40 years old was still young. I wonder how that girl from the Wu clan is doing, Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself, standing on the treetop as the wind rose and fell, and shook his head with a bitter smile. In fact, because he had the golden bead, he could come here to see that girl every day, but he did not do so, and devoted all his energy to the great cause of scheming against others. Could it be that she was already married? After thinking about it, he felt that it was unlikely. This era was different from his previous life, and Wu Lixue had already been branded with his, Yu Qianqiu's mark. She could not be married at will. But because of this, he wanted to use the opportunity of the Wu clan's auction to make a high-profile appearance and announce that he had returned. Now he was a little afraid of seeing that girl's sad eyes when he went to the Wu clan. We have to meet anyway. At worst, I'll just get beaten up by that girl, and it's okay if I die. Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth, jumped off the treetop, and flew quickly to Hat Island. Being on the streets of Hat Island, Yu Qianqiu looked around, and there was not much change. Looking left and right, he walked in the bustling crowd, and no one paid attention to him. After all, not everyone had seen him with their own eyes. But it was not that no one had not seen him, so. Suddenly, someone on the street let out a long cry of surprise. Damn it! I thought no one would recognize me after making a high-profile appearance. Yu Qianqiu criticized in his heart, and continued to walk his own path, and let others be surprised. The passers-by followed the surprised person's gaze, and immediately, someone couldn't help but exclaim again, "It's Yu Qianqiu!" What? It's Yu Qianqiu? Where? Where? Ah, it's really him. Yu Qianqiu is back. The entire streets of Hat Island were suddenly in an uproar, and the news quickly spread that Yu Qianqiu, who had become the #1 expert below the soul formation stage in a foreign country, had returned. The first reaction of the disciples of the various sects was to run back to the shops of their sects and pass this important news back to their own sections. Under the gaze of countless people, Yu Qianqiu felt like returning home in glory. When he walked to the river bridge that had been destroyed in the battle with Luo Qingtian and had been rebuilt, a large group of people from the Wu clan had already flown over. The person who was laughing was naturally the Wu clan's clan master, Wu Sihai. He had met most of the others before. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands at them and said with a smile, "Long time no see. How are you all?" The current Yu Qianqiu was no longer comparable to the Yu Qianqiu of the past. His reputation was not just ordinary. It was said that he had been personally acknowledged by a soul formation final stage expert as the #1 expert below the soul formation stage. In addition, some of the higher-ups of the Wu clan knew that he was Bai Changchun's disciple, so they were all polite to him and greeted him back. Good. Wu Sihai looked at him and couldn't help but clap his hands and praise him a few times. He was so happy that he couldn't speak. Then he waved his hand and said, "Please." Yu Qianqiu glanced at the crowd, but he didn't see Wu Lixue's figure. After feeling slightly disappointed, he didn't stand on ceremony and flew into the sky, following the Wu clan's group to the Wu clan's residence. After arriving at the Wu clan's ancestral hall, Yu Qianqiu respectfully bowed to the remade portrait of Bai Changchun in the center. The original portrait had already been burned by him. Then, the Wu clan's people all followed suit and bowed. Ever since Bai Changchun, the #1 figure in the cultivation world, was widely known by the people of China's cultivation world, the entire Wu clan became more and more respectful to this portrait. They even sent people to guard it, so that the tragedy of being burned down last time wouldn't happen again. If that happened, They would be letting down the old ancestor. After a series of courteous greetings, Yu Qianqiu was a little impatient. He really didn't have a common language with this group of people. Just think about it. When he first met this group of tribulation-passing experts, he still felt a little excited. Now that they were asking and answering, he felt that it was boring. He could only force a smile and deal with them. It wasn't that he looked down on them, but he had seen too many big scenes. Right now, his eyesight and knowledge had far surpassed them. It felt like an adult talking to a 3-year-old child. However, he couldn't show his unwillingness because of Bai Changchun and Wu Lixue. Otherwise, with his temper, he would have left long ago. Wu Sihai understood this fellow, who liked to cause trouble wherever he went. He dismissed everyone, and asked someone to lead Yu Qianqiu to the quiet guest house to rest. Chapter 665. As soon as he arrived at quiet guest house, Yu Qianqiu dismissed the Wu family's disciples who asked him if he needed anything. He strolled around the garden alone, and even peeked through the cracks in the rockery. But he did not find a place to hide someone. He could not help but look around and ponder. Didn't Wu Sihai hint that Wu Lixue would often be alone here? Where did she go? Could it be that she's deliberately avoiding me? It seems like that girl is angry that I haven't been here for a long time. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and ran back to his room, instantly disappearing. When he reappeared, he had already returned to a remote place in Utopia. He closed his eyes and contacted the item he had given Wu Lixue. From Wu Sihai's words, that girl was still thinking about him. In that case, the item he gave her should be with her. Not long after, he found the location of the item and appeared in the room again. After that, he went straight downstairs to the back room, only to find that his target location was actually a small storeroom in the corner. He frowned immediately, and without saying a word, he directly kicked the door in with a pung-pung sound. Immediately, an ear-piercing scream rang out from inside. With a murderous look on his face, Yu Qianqiu dashed in with a ball of black flames in each of his hands. When he saw the person squatting in the gray corner, he quickly scanned the surroundings warily, but he did not discover anything. He retracted the black flames in his hands, and the murderous look on his face disappeared. He stared at the person in the corner and said in shock, "Wu Lixue, what are you doing here?" He thought that Wu Lixue had been kidnapped or trapped in this small space, so he broke the door and barged in. Unexpectedly, it was not as he thought. He saw Wu Lixue hugging a ball of light that flickered and dimmed in the corner of the storeroom full of junk. Wu Lixue was looking at him with her eyes blinking. She was completely fine. Seeing that she did not say anything, Yu Qianqiu asked curiously, "What did you scream about?" He did not know that he had suddenly kicked the door open and startled her. Wu Lixue shook his head and slowly moved over. He weakly bowed and said, "Mr. Yu." Then he quickly walked out. Yu Qianqiu was stunned by the way she addressed him as Mr. Yu. Then he suddenly realized that this girl was really angry. So, he quickly dashed out and stood in front of Wu Lixue. He originally wanted to reprimand her, but he discovered that this girl looked haggard and didn't have the lively and adorable liveliness she used to have. He immediately became discouraged and lowered his head to admit his mistake. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have not come to see you for so long. Are you angry? I promise I won't do it again. Lixue, please give me another chance. I'm afraid that you'll ignore me." He firmly believed that an innocent girl was easy to educate. She stared at him with her big, unblinking eyes, and immediately became extremely wronged. Her eyes became misty and big drops of tears flowed down. Her shoulders trembled and she choked with sobs. With this cry, Yu Qianqiu felt even more guilty. He immediately pulled her into his arms and let her tears drench his chest. He carefully patted her back and comforted her. "Don't cry, don't cry." In the end, the more he comforted her, the sadder she seemed to cry. She hid in his arms and sobbed, "I thought you didn't want me anymore." "Nonsense, how is that possible?" Yu Qianqiu coaxed her like he was coaxing a child. "The sisters in the family all say that you're now a great person in the cultivation world. You don't like a woman like me and won't want me anymore." Wu Lixue kept sobbing and complaining. It seemed like she had heard a lot of gossip. "Damn it! Who's the one who's talking nonsense?" Yu Qianqiu pushed her shoulders away with a murderous look and said fiercely, "Who's the one who said that? Bring me to her and I'll kill them all. Let's go now." He turned around and walked away as if he was really going to kill someone. With this scare, Wu Lixue immediately stopped crying. She grabbed him with one hand and panicked. "Don't. They're just saying it casually. Don't kill them." She grabbed him with one hand and held on to something in her other hand that was red and bright. She refused to let go. "They're just saying it casually. Why are you crying like this? I don't believe it. Let's go and settle the score with them." Yu Qianqiu looked like he wouldn't stop until he killed a few people. He actually pushed the reason why she was crying to someone else, and he did it so confidently. How could Wu Lixue withstand his bluff? She was really scared out of her wits. She grabbed onto him with all her might and shook her head with all her might. "I won't cry anymore. It really isn't their fault." She knew Yu Qianqiu's style of doing things. Back then, he didn't even blink when he killed the Wu clan's elder. Why would he care about the lives of a few unrelated little girls? Yu Qianqiu turned around and asked, "You really won't cry anymore? You were the one who said that the sisters in the clan were gossiping. You're still crying. It must be true. I'll kill them now." He acted like he was going to kill someone again. "I won't cry anymore. I really won't cry anymore." Wu Lixue's face was covered in tears, but she tried her best to squeeze out a smile to tell him that she really wouldn't cry anymore. In the end, her smile was even uglier than her crying. Yu Qianqiu's heart softened. He couldn't bear to bluff her anymore. He bent over and carried her in his arms. He ran up the stairs and into the room. As soon as she was carried into the room, she thought of what he was going to do. She immediately said shyly, "What are you going to do?" Sure enough, Yu Qianqiu laughed sinisterly and said, "What else do you think I'm going to do? I haven't seen you for a long time. Naturally, I want to make up for what I owe you." Wu Lixue's exclamation immediately sounded in the room. Then Yu Qianqiu complained, "Let go. Why do you keep holding this broken egg? Just throw it away." "I can't throw it away. This is the first thing you gave me. Damn it. It's inconvenient for you to keep holding this. Don't snatch it. Grandaunt, can you let go first? It won't be too late to hug it after we're done." Then there was a dong-dong sound in the room. It was the sound of something being thrown to the ground and rolling around. "Hey, what is this?" Wu Lixue's surprised voice came from the room. "Hee, it's fun, right? This is the water art that I cultivate. I'll help you wash your flowery face first. Then we'll take a bath together." The sound of water splashing could be heard. Then, the room was filled with Wu Lixue's cheerful laughter and Yu Qianqiu's sinister laughter. It seemed that the two of them were having a great time playing in the water. After a while, the window upstairs was opened. A small pool of water smashed into the garden with a bang and thoroughly watered the flowers and grass. Then the window was closed tightly. There was a chaotic and unbearable sound coming from inside. It was really like a spring sleep without waking up. Until noon the next day, the sound of someone waking up lazily came from the room after a night of soul-stirring battle. No one knew what Wu Lixue was muttering. After a while, the sound of water splashing could be heard in the room again. It seemed that the two of them were playing in the water again. After a long time, the window opened and another pool of water smashed into the garden with a bang. After tossing and turning, the two of them always hid in the room to do things. It wouldn't be nice to say that, so the two of them decided to go out and take a stroll. Yu Qianqiu was lying on the bed half naked. He first drooled as he admired the beautiful scene of Wu Lixue's beautiful figure wearing clothes. One must know that Wu Lixue's impressive breasts were the biggest reason why he was attracted to her in the first place. Only after he was satisfied with the sight did he slowly wrap himself up. When they were about to leave, Yu Qianqiu saw Wu Lixue hugging the dinosaur egg that had rolled under the table. That thing had been adding color to the two's arduous battle the whole night. Yu Qianqiu had looked at it several times while they were fighting. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Why are you always hugging it? Don't tell me you want to learn how to hatch eggs like a hen?" Wu Lixue opened her eyes wide and pouted. "When you're not here, it's always with me. I've gotten used to hugging it over the years." Yu Qianqiu smiled embarrassedly. He reached out his hand and said, "Then let me hug it too." Wu Lishua gave him the egg. He hugged it and looked at it carefully. Ever since he bought it for Wu Lishua, this was the first time he looked at it carefully. He walked to the window and looked at it under the sunlight. He couldn't see what was inside. He wanted to use his divine sense to check, but found that it couldn't penetrate. He couldn't help but scratch his head. Strange, why is this thing glowing? He turned around and asked, "Have you ever thought of opening it to see what's inside?" Wu Lishua shook her head. "I'll break it if I open it. This is the first thing you've given me. Why don't we open it now?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Wu Lishua shook her head resolutely, but Yu Qianqiu's curiosity was aroused. He even dared to barge into the underworld cave. How could he stop him? He said to Wu Lishua with a serious expression, "Have you ever thought that there might be some treasure inside? The treasure inside is the real thing I'm giving you." Wu Lishua was startled. Hearing him say that, her expression seemed to be a bit tempted. She asked suspiciously, "Is there really a treasure inside?" Yu Qianqiu nodded seriously. He patiently said, "From my experience in the cultivation world, there's a high chance that there's a treasure inside. How about we open it and see?" Wu Lishua was tempted by his words. She said, "If there's no treasure inside, then promise to give me something else as compensation." "No problem." Yu Qianqiu laughed. Since he had already convinced the owner of the dinosaur egg, he didn't hesitate to chop the egg. Puff! Yu Qianqiu's face twitched. He slowly pulled his hand back from the egg. His hand was in pain, but the egg didn't react at all. "What's wrong?" Wu Lishua asked. Yu Qianqiu shook his head. His expression became serious. He began to pay attention to the dinosaur egg. With his current cultivation, even though he didn't use his full strength, his palm strike was enough to split open a large rock. Who would have thought that this thing would be so hard that it didn't react at all? He was now suspecting that this thing might actually be a treasure. In for a penny, in for a pound. Yu Qianqiu's temper flared up. He suddenly started punching and kicking the egg crazily. However, after a long time, the egg didn't react at all. It wasn't just Yu Qianqiu. Even Wu Lishua was shocked. She never thought of breaking this thing, so she didn't know it was so hard. In her mind, Yu Qianqiu was known as the #1 cultivator below the soul formation stage, so his cultivation level must be very high. Even a piece of black iron should have been deformed by his attacks. But this so-called egg didn't have any reaction at all. This was incredible. Chapter 666. It can't be helped, it's forcing me to be ruthless. Yu Qianqiu laughed and placed the glowing dinosaur egg on the table with a sinister expression. Wu Lishua saw his sinister smile and couldn't help but ask in a small voice, "What do you want to do?" "Of course I want to open it," Yu Qianqiu said as he pulled out a large black saber from his storage pouch. Wu Lishua was dumbstruck. She naturally knew of the reputation of this large black saber. It was a treasured saber that could cut through anything. "Be careful, don't break the treasure inside," Wu Lishua said worriedly. "It's fine, I know what I'm doing." As he spoke, Yu Qianqiu's saber had already landed on the egg. Dong! A crisp sound rang out. The saber collided with the egg, emitting a sound that wasn't made of gold, wood, iron, or stone. The two of them looked over at the same time. The egg was still sitting on the table without any damage, but there was a white mark on its surface. Yu Qianqiu reached out to touch the white mark. Who would have thought that it would be like a chalk drawing, easily erasing it without a trace? The two of them looked at each other speechlessly. Yu Qianqiu looked at the large black saber in his hand, then looked at the egg-like glowing red object in disbelief. He simply couldn't believe that the unparalleled sharpness of his large black saber couldn't cut through this thing. Up until now, he only knew that the dark iron could slightly restrain the large black saber, but it couldn't completely block its sharpness. As for other things, it couldn't block them at all. Who would have thought that they would meet a tough opponent today? Wu Lishua's eyes were also filled with disbelief. She had heard that even soul formation stage experts wanted to steal this treasured saber, so it was easy to imagine how powerful it was. She never thought that the object she was always hugging would be so hard. She blankly said, "I can't open it, what do we do?" "I don't believe it." Yu Qianqiu spat. His saber whistled through the air, whistling through the air. With a pung sound, the table fell apart. The two of them could only watch as the egg smashed a hole in the floor and fell downstairs. There wasn't much commotion above, but there was a loud bang below. Even those standing above could feel the tremor. The two of them looked at each other, speechless. In for a penny, in for a pound. Since the floor was already broken, Yu Qianqiu dragged his saber and drew a circle on the floor, directly creating another large hole. Wu Lixue didn't have any objections, and the two of them jumped down. In the end, he found that the stone floor at the bottom had been smashed into a deep pit, and the things in the room were destroyed by the flying rocks and soil. Even after 2 layers of buffering, Yu Qianqiu was still able to create a large hole. One could imagine how much strength Yu Qianqiu used. In the middle of the crater, the dinosaur egg lay there quietly. Its red light flickered, as if it was looking down on someone's actions. Wu Lixue jumped into the hole and dug up the egg. After the two of them examined it carefully, they found that the broken thing was still stable and undamaged, except for some dirt. Yu Qianqiu was speechless as he sheathed his broadsword. He knew that if he couldn't even leave a mark on it, it would be futile to try to cut it again. He had to think of another way. At this moment, the sound of many people rushing down could be heard from the garden outside. It was obvious that they had been attracted by the commotion here. Yu Qianqiu took the egg from Wu Lixue's hands and gave her a look, signaling her to send them away. Then, he scurried back through the hole on his head and hugged the egg to study it in the room. After a while, Wu Lixue hurriedly came back. When she entered the room, she was shocked and exclaimed, "What are you doing?" The room was flashing with green light. She saw Yu Qianqiu holding the egg with one hand. There was a brilliant green flame burning in his palm, wrapping around the egg in his hand and burning it. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and chuckled. "Since I can't split it open, I'll use fire. If fire still doesn't work, I'll boil it in water. In any case, I'll try all kinds of methods and it might work. If it really doesn't work, I can only give up. Who knows what this thing is? In any case, it can't be an egg. There can't be such a hard egg in this world. Hee. Maybe it's some rare material for refining artifacts. One day, I'll show it to the world's #1 refining expert, old ancestor Nan Ming. Maybe he'll recognize what it is." Wu Lixue nodded and silently stood beside him to observe. In the end, after half a day, there was no reaction from the egg. The red light was still flashing, and even the color didn't change. Wu Lixue couldn't help but ask, "Is this going to work?" Treasure, it really is a treasure." Yu Qianqiu clicked his tongue. Although he didn't know what it was, the big black knife couldn't split it open. Even the highest temperature of the condensed green fire couldn't burn it. Just based on these 2 points, this thing was definitely not ordinary. It wouldn't be too much to call it a treasure. "Let's boil it again." Yu Qianqiu did as he said. He opened his other hand, and clear water flowed out of his palm like a spring. But at this moment, the two of them exclaimed in unison, and their gazes focused on the egg. They saw that the strange thing that was being burned by the green fire suddenly stopped flashing red. After the last flash of red light, the red light solidified on the surface and didn't disappear anymore. It wasn't like before, where it kept flickering red and dark. However, the red light seemed to be stronger and brighter than before. She wanted to ask what was going on, but when she saw Chen Chongqing's unwavering gaze, she was afraid of disturbing him. After a long while, the two of them glanced at each other in confusion, wondering just what they had been doing all this time. The black egg was completely motionless. Outside, night had fallen, and the sky was filled with stars. Another day had passed. What do we do? Yu Qianqiu no longer had any temper with the black egg, and didn't want to continue tormenting it. So he began to consult Wu Lixue. Wu Lixue took the black egg back and looked it up and down. Except that it no longer glowed. There was no difference from before. She turned her head and asked, "Don't you want to boil it with water?" Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He estimated that there would be no reaction even if he boiled it with water, so he didn't want to waste time. He looked out of the window and said with a smile, "Now it's dark. Let's get down to business. We'll talk about it later." After saying that, he held Wu Lixue up, causing the latter to exclaim. The two of them went to bed happily. As soon as they turned over the big quilt, Yu Qianqiu's complaining voice came. My dear lady, didn't you just put it aside? Why did you suddenly appear out of nowhere and bring it up again? Give it to me. A big foot stretched out from under the quilt and kicked Haydn out. Then it kicked Haydn directly to the bottom of the bed and made him roll around. There was a lot of movement on the bed. The passionate love disturbed the tranquility of the night. The sun was rising, and it just bloomed with golden light on the distant horizon. Yu Qianqiu was sleeping in the quilt, but he was woken up by someone. He opened his sleepy eyelids and saw Wu Lixue staring at him. So he closed his eyes without hesitation and waved his arms to push Wu Lixue, who was supporting her upper body, down to sleep with him. Unexpectedly, Wu Lixue hurriedly pushed him awake again. She pointed outside the bed and said in surprise, Look, look. Yu Qianqiu didn't know what she wanted him to look at. Suddenly, he heard the sound of something rolling on the floor. He opened his eyes wide and looked back. He saw the black egg that was thrown to the ground yesterday was rolling on the ground alone. Chapter 667. What does that mean? Yu Qianqiu was a little dumbfounded. This thing that couldn't be cut open by the peerless sword, and couldn't be burned by the green flame, actually moved by itself. What the hell is going on? He was dumbfounded, but Wu Lixue, who was behind him, quickly put on his clothes and said excitedly, Let me see what's wrong. Climbing over Yu Qianqiu, he didn't even have time to put on his shoes and socks. Barefooted, he got off the bed and ran over. That black egg rolled here and there. Seeing that it was about to roll into the hole that Yu Qianqiu dug on the floor, Wu Lixue bent down and picked it up. His big eyes were filled with curiosity as he stared at the egg without blinking. Holding it in his hands and shaking it, he put it to his ear to listen. Suddenly he let out a cry and looked at Yu Qianqiu in surprise. Yu Qianqiu, there's really something moving inside. Yu Qianqiu revealed an idiotic expression and asked foolishly, What's moving? I don't know. Wu Lixue looked at the black egg in his hands and asked, Don't you think it looks like an egg? Do I need you to remind me? Not only does it look like an egg, but it also looks like a dinosaur egg. Yu Qianqiu sat up on the bed and rubbed his chin, as he imagined the scene of a Tyrannosaurus Rex hatching from the egg, and him taking it for a ride everywhere. But after thinking about it, he felt that it wasn't right. A dinosaur egg shouldn't be so tough that he couldn't open it no matter how hard he tried, right? Without any hesitation, he put on his clothes and jumped off the bed. He reached out and said, Let me see. Wu Lixue handed the egg to him, who knew that when he held it in his hands his expression changed. He saw that the egg that was still quietly in Wu Lixue's arms immediately started to shake the moment it was in his hands. The egg shook violently, and even Yu Qianqiu's arms started to shake. Wu Lixue was confused, but Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. He didn't know what it meant either. Beep, beep, beep. The entire room was filled with the sound of hurried rioting. Yu Qianqiu's face was flushed red. He used all his strength to hold on to the egg, and the man and the egg began to compete with each other. The egg in his hand reminded him of the pile drivers from his previous life. It was the kind of rapid vibration. In the end, Yu Qianqiu's whole body shook along with the egg in his hand. He held his breath and said, You're so strong. I can't hold it anymore. F***CKU. Hey Dan was directly thrown out by him. It hit the wall with a ping sound, and then hit the ground with a bang sound, rolling around. The strange thing was, as soon as the thing left Yu Qianqiu's hand, the do-do-do vibrating sound disappeared. The black egg rolled on the ground and stopped moving. Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded again. He said in astonishment, F***CKU. It can't be so strange, right? Is there really something wrong with my character? Wu Lixue looked at the black egg, and then looked at Yu Qianqiu. She couldn't help but laugh. Why was it fine in her hand, but it was haunted when it was in his hand? She held back her laughter, and tentatively walked to the black egg to hold it. Sure enough, it was fine. Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. Wu Lixue only took a glance at it, and immediately burst into laughter. She laughed so hard that she rocked back and forth with joy. D***MN girl. If you dare to laugh again, I will strip your clothes and spank you. Yu Qianqiu threatened with a hazy face. I won't laugh, I won't laugh. Wu Lixue smiled and shook her head again and again. Suddenly, her smile froze on her face. She slowly looked down at her hand and said, Yu Qianqiu, come and have a look. It seems that there are many cracks on it. Really? Yu Qianqiu's face was suspicious, but then it turned into curiosity. He said excitedly, Where? Where? Let me have a look. His two outstretched hands just touched the egg, and then he retracted them. He smiled embarrassedly. You hold it. This broken thing is not right with me. The two of them looked at each other's heads and carefully observed the surface of the black egg. If they didn't look carefully, they really couldn't find that there were crisscrossed and very regular tiny cracks on the surface of the black egg. The distance between the cracks was almost the same as the size of the square, as if this egg was put together by many pieces. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but reach out to touch the surface. He said with a tut-tut, It's really a crack. Is this thing really an egg? Is there something hatching in it? Suddenly, there was a beep sound again. Yu Qianqiu quickly retracted his hand that was touching it. As expected, it verified the rule that he couldn't touch it. Wu Lixue looked at his embarrassed appearance of retracting his hand and began to hold back a smile on her face again. However, she seemed to be complacent a little too early this time. It was good that Yu Qianqiu retracted his hand, but the beep sound sounded again, and it was very violent and continuous beep. Wu Lixue's cultivation was far worse than Yu Qianqiu's. The egg in her hand almost jumped out, and her hands were jumping, and then there was no more movement. Looking at Wu Lixue's surprised expression, Yu Qianqiu finally felt a little better. At first, he thought it was really because of his character that even this black egg didn't like him. Now it seemed that it had nothing to do with his character at all. It was just a coincidence before. Maybe there was really something hatching in this egg, and it wanted to break the shell from the inside. Beep. Pa. Wu Lixue's arms jumped violently because of the jumping black egg. She almost let go of her hands, but she forcibly pulled them back. However, Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up, because he saw a little silver light popping out of the eggshell. It was sometimes black, sometimes silver, and sometimes black. Yu Qianqiu stretched out his arm and caught the small piece that flipped in the air. He casually looked at it and suddenly said with a smile, This egg is finally broken. It's not easy. Because of the slightly curved small piece in his hand, the slightly concave side was shining with dazzling silver light, and the slightly protruding side was black and inconspicuous. Obviously, it was the eggshell of the black egg. Yu Qianqiu shook the eggshell in his hand and said, Lixue, look at what's inside the egg. Before he finished speaking, he found that without his reminder, Wu Lixue had already squinted one eye and curiously looked into the hole on the eggshell. As she looked, she muttered, Yu Qianqiu, I can't see clearly, but it's really beautiful inside, as if there are many colorful stars shining. Let me take a closer look. Little did she know that at this time, Yu Qianqiu was staring at her with his mouth wide open. Just as Wu Lixue squinted her eyes to look inside the egg, he saw a colorful light shining from the hole on the eggshell, shining on Wu Lixue's face. Then, like a dream, an incredible scene appeared. The colorful light shone confusedly, and the sparkling colorful stars twinkled delicately, intertwining to form a ray of colorful shining stars. Like a thin mist, it floated dreamily from the hole. Wu Lixue seemed to not notice it at all. She squinted one eye and continued to look. Her face was full of obsession, as if she was attracted by the gorgeous colors in the hole. As she breathed in and out, the thin mist that shone like the colorful stars was actually sucked in by her. She was still smacking her lips and sniffing with all her might. She said, What is this? It smells so good. Yu Qianqiu, do you smell it? She took a few deep breaths, in an intoxicated manner. As the first wisp of colorful shining mist was sucked in by her, countless colorful light spots that floated in the air began to gather on her body. Slowly, it started from her head and gradually covered her whole body. Yu Qianqiu swallowed his saliva with difficulty. He didn't smell any fragrance, but he felt that the room was suddenly filled with an ancient and rich aura. It was very, very ancient. It made people have the urge to bow down and worship. What did he see at this time? The Wu Lixue in front of him was like a goddess who was shrouded in dreamy colors. She was barefooted, stepping on the colorful stars, and her whole body was shining with a holy light. More and more colorful star mist gently coiled around her body, and gradually condensed into a pair of almost illusory wings behind her. The ancient aura on the wings was especially dignified. It was the kind of ancient and incomparable noble aura, as if she was an eternal royal family. The colorful light in the room shone brilliantly, and the colorful wings that shone with the stars slowly spread open and gently flapped. Chapter 668. With this thought in mind, Yu Qianqiu decided not to mention what he had just seen, at least not to anyone in the short term. Otherwise, he did not know what would happen if word got out. He hoped that he could do his best to let her remain pure for the rest of her life, and experience fewer troubles. Why are the colorful stars gone? Wu Lixue frowned and muttered. Then, she raised her head excitedly and shouted to Yu Qianqiu. I saw something inside, guess what it is? Yu Qianqiu silently looked at her, his eyes filled with love as he smiled and said, I'm guessing it's something with wings. Wu Lixue was stunned and asked in surprise, How do you know? Then, she squinted her eyes and continued to look. It has wings, but it is not moving, so I can't see what it is. It's moving, it's moving. Yu Qianqiu's interest was immediately piqued. He really wanted to see what was inside that caused such a miraculous scene. Just as he was about to reach out to hold the egg in Wu Lixue's hand, the entire egg suddenly became surrounded by a colorful halo, making a series of pa-pa-pa sounds and bursting with a dazzling light. When the two closed their eyes, they heard a series of sounds of things falling on the floor. When the dazzling light disappeared, and the two opened their eyes again, the egg in Wu Lixue's hand had disappeared. Between the two of them was an ugly, strange bird. Looking at it, it was flying proudly and arrogantly. Just the way it turned its head and looked around, it seemed to be saying, I finally broke out of the egg. Crow! The two of them exclaimed almost at the same time. Then they looked at each other in shock, thinking that they had seen wrongly. Just think about it. After spending so much effort and so many strange things, a strange egg that took 2 days to hatch turned out to be a crow. Moreover, this crow was uglier than a crow. It was a crow that did not look alike. It basically had the outline of a crow and shiny black feathers, but there were 3 colorful feathers on its head. Its beak and claws were a dazzling gold, and the feathers on its head and neck glowed with a purplish-blue metallic luster. Its body seemed to be much wider than an ordinary crow's. 2 eyes brimming with intelligence blinked. But generally speaking, the closest bird was a crow. Wu Lixue was a little better. After all, she didn't see the shocking scene that happened to her. But Yu Qianqiu found it hard to accept that such a breathtaking and magnificent scene was actually a crow? How was this possible? The crow flapped its wings and looked around proudly, as if it could understand what the two of them were saying. When it heard the two of them exclaiming crow, it seemed to have suffered a huge blow. It staggered and almost fell on the floor. Fortunately, it flapped its wings desperately and flew up. His head turned left and right, sizing up the two of them. His intelligent eyes were actually filled with grief and indignation, an indescribable desolation, as if he had been humiliated. The two of them were stunned by the crow's dramatic expression. Could it be that the crow could understand human speech? Yu Qianqiu looked at it carefully. It seemed to be quite different from a crow, but overall, it still looked like a crow. He then asked tentatively, What bird? Can you understand what we're saying? The crow glared at him angrily and turned its head away arrogantly, as if it couldn't be bothered with him. Oh ho! Yu Qianqiu raised his 2 sleeves and threatened with a sinister expression. Little bastard, you've got guts. You've just hatched and you dare to show off. If I let you flop around for another 2 days, you'll turn the sky upside down. Do you believe that I won't pluck your feathers right now and let you run naked on the ground? The crow flapped its wings and immediately turned around to glare angrily at them. The purplish-blue metallic feathers on its neck opened up, as if it wanted to fight it out with Yu Qianqiu. Feathered bastard, you're asking for a beating. Yu Qianqiu opened up his claws, wanting to grab it and beat it up. Wu Lixue, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but laugh. Seeing that he was really going to make a move, she immediately called out to stop him. Yu Qianqiu, don't hurt it. Seeing that she was protecting it, Yu Qianqiu retracted his outstretched hand and grinned. I was just trying to see if it could really understand us. From the looks of it, it really can. Hearing him say that, Wu Lishua's eyes lit up. From the crow's actions, it seemed like it could really understand human speech. Wu Lishua's eyes immediately lit up as she looked at the crow. Suddenly, her nose twitched and she said, Yu Qianqiu, do you smell that? It smells so good. It's the fragrance I smelled just now. Ever since the crow came out, the room had been filled with a strange fragrance. It was just that his attention had been focused on the crow, and he had not noticed it. Now that Wu Lishua mentioned it, Yu Qianqiu sniffed it. It was indeed very fragrant, like musk or orchids. He could not describe the fragrance, but it made him feel refreshed. The crow flapped its wings and looked around. Suddenly, it landed on Wu Lishua's shoulder and rubbed its head intimately on her hair. Wu Lishua was tickled by it and could not help but giggle. She raised her hand and stroked its smooth feathers. The crow's expression immediately became peaceful. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin and looked at the bird. No matter how he looked at it, he did not feel comfortable. A beautiful lady with a crow perched on her shoulder. It was indeed a strange sight. His gaze was suddenly attracted by the shiny silver eggshells on the floor. He walked around the room and picked up all the eggshells that were scattered on the floor. Every time he picked up a piece, he would secretly circulate his energy to test it. In the end, he found that it was still extremely hard. With his level of cultivation, he could not do anything to these eggshells. After testing it, he was a little shocked. He thought that the eggshells had softened after hatching, but he did not expect them to still be so hard. Just think about it. He could not open them even after spending so much effort, but this stupid crow managed to open them. How strong was this stupid bird? Yu Qianqiu looked at the crow solemnly. It was said that one could not judge a person by their appearance, but he did not expect that birds could not be judged by their appearance either. It looked ugly, but it was actually quite capable. Yu Qianqiu started to ponder. What kind of bird was this? After thinking about it, he even searched through some of the myths and legends, but he could not think of any bird that looked like a crow. But one thing was for sure, it was definitely not an ordinary bird. It could be seen from the movements it made earlier. He had just kept the eggshells when he suddenly heard a concentrated piu-piu sound coming from the air outside. The two of them looked at each other and did not know what had happened. They walked to the window and opened it. They saw countless different kinds of birds circling in the sky, and there were more and more of them coming from afar. What's the meaning of this? Yu Qianqiu was puzzled. In a flash, he directly jumped out of the window and flew to the roof of the quiet guest house. Wu Lishua also rushed up. The two of them looked around and were instantly stunned. The Wu clan was originally located in the vast mountains, so there was naturally no lack of all kinds of birds in the surrounding forest. But now, the sky above the Wu clan was currently filled with thousands of different kinds of birds, filled with all kinds of chirping sounds. The spectacular colorful scene floated in the sky like flowing clouds. At this moment, not only the two of them, but the entire Wu clan had also come out. They all stared at the sky in astonishment, not knowing what had happened. The cultivators of the various sects on Hat Island were also looking at the Wu clan from afar, and all of them were amazed. Wu Sihai led a few Wu clan elders and flew to the Wu clan's defensive sentry tower. The disciples on the sentry tower did not know what to do. Their duty was to stop people who trespassed into the Wu clan, but there was no such thing as stopping birds that trespassed into the Wu clan. Seeing that the clan head had arrived, they immediately asked the clan head if they should drive them away. Wu Sihai looked around and looked into the distance. He saw that there was a continuous flow of all kinds of birds coming from the dense forest, forming a trend that covered the sky and the sun. It made one's scalp go numb. The elders looked at each other. They had seen all kinds of birds, but no one had seen so many birds gathered together. It was simply a great spectacle. Wu Sihai looked at the densest flock of birds in the sky. He did not know what attracted them there, and they were circling below the quiet guest house. Wu Sihai's gaze suddenly focused, and he saw Yu Qianqiu and Wu Lixue on the roof of the quiet guest house. The two of them were pointing at the birds above their heads. Wu Sihai's immediate judgment was that this matter was definitely caused by Yu Qianqiu. This was because this fellow would cause a commotion no matter where he went. Even if someone told Wu Sihai that this matter had nothing to do with Yu Qianqiu, Wu Sihai would not believe it. He did not believe that this fella had nothing to do with Yu Qianqiu during normal times. It would be strange if this matter had nothing to do with him. There's no need to drive them away. Nothing will happen. Wu Sihai instructed the disciples on the sentry tower. But you all have to be vigilant. Be careful of people trying to fish in troubled waters. Although the disciples on the sentry tower did not know why he was so sure that nothing would happen, they still obeyed the order and retreated. Women were naturally fond of small animals, and birds with colorful and beautiful feathers were more attractive to them. At this moment, Wu Lixue was jumping excitedly on the roof. Although she lived in the mountains and had seen many birds, there were many birds in the sky that she had never seen before. Their bright feathers were dazzling. Wow! Look, it's so beautiful! Wu Lixue pointed at a pheasant that had just flown over her head. It had colorful feathers, and a long tail of colorful feathers. It was like a peacock spreading its tail in the sky. Yu Qianqiu stammered perfunctorily. He rubbed his chin and stared at the sky. No matter how he looked at it, he found it strange. What made him feel the most strange was that some birds were natural enemies. For example, there was a vicious eagle mixed in the flock of birds. However, at this moment, they were coexisting harmoniously in the sky. It really did not make sense. Wow! That one is so beautiful. Wu Lixue pointed at the sky and exclaimed. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and glanced at her. He inadvertently saw that the crow on her shoulder glanced at the bird she pointed at. It revealed a disdainful look, as if it was mocking. This was considered beautiful. Chapter 669. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but chuckle. Why did it feel like this crow was jealous? You think you're worthy of mocking others with your black feathers? Xiao Xiao was stunned again, looking at the flock of birds in the sky, and then at the crow. She couldn't help but reveal a face full of suspicion. Could it be that it attracted all these birds? The more she thought about it, the more likely it seemed. The scene of the crow's birth was too eye-catching. It probably wasn't impossible for it to attract tens of thousands of birds. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for a flock of birds to come and congratulate it the moment it appeared. Looking at the various birds chirping happily overhead, it seemed like they were here to celebrate. I say, crow, think of a way to make them disperse. It's too rude to block others from sunbathing. Yu Qianqiu said tentatively. In the end, when the crow heard this, it shook on Wu Lixue's shoulder and staggered, almost losing its balance. It glared angrily at Yu Qianqiu, seeming to be very disgusted by someone calling it a crow. Wu Lixue turned around and asked in surprise, You said it can disperse the flock of birds in the sky? Yu Qianqiu shrugged, indicating that he couldn't be sure. The crow seemed to be very unhappy with Wu Lixue's belittling of its abilities. Its originally disdainful eyes suddenly became bright and spirited. It stared at the flock of birds in the sky, its body faintly glowing with vibrant colors. Yu Qianqiu was slightly surprised. The crow was still the same crow, but he suddenly felt that its aura was different. Such a small fellow actually had a domineering aura. At this moment, the birds in the sky suddenly disrupted their circling formation and began to descend one after another. In the blink of an eye, all the birds in the sky disappeared. Only feathers of various colors slowly floated down. With quiet guest house as the center, there were all kinds of birds everywhere, densely covering every visible corner. Even the roof where the two of them were standing was filled with them. The two of them didn't dare to move recklessly, afraid that if they moved, they would trample a few to death. Not to mention Yu Qianqiu and Wu Lixue. Even Wu Sihai and the others on the watchtower were dumbfounded after witnessing this magical scene. Wu Sihai was even more certain that this matter was done by Yu Qianqiu. However, he was also suspicious of how Yu Qianqiu did it. Could it be that he had learned some kind of beast-controlling technique? Docile pigeons, ferocious eagles, colorful pheasants. No matter how big or small they were, All kinds of birds bowed their heads towards where the two of them stood. Wu Lishue looked at the proud crow perched on his shoulder, his mouth agape in shock. She wasn't an idiot. She naturally understood that it wasn't her, or Yu Qianqiu who made the birds submit, but the crow on her shoulder. Yu Qianqiu looked around at the colorful birds with their heads lowered. An idea flashed through his mind. He remembered an ancient legend from his previous life. Legend has it that there was a kind of divine bird that could make a flock of birds bow down to it. Because of this, a beautiful idiom came into being, which was called 100 birds bow down to the phoenix. However, the phoenix in the 100 birds bow down to the phoenix was a divine bird, the phoenix. Could it be the legendary divine bird, the phoenix? Yu Qianqiu's mind was filled with doubts. If he only saw the scene of its birth and not the crow itself, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't doubt that it was a phoenix, because the scene was very eye-catching. But if someone said that this bird that looked like a crow was a phoenix, he wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. Legend has it that the phoenix was the most beautiful and noble divine bird. Just like the qilin, both male and female were collectively referred to as the phoenix. The male was the phoenix and the female was the phoenix. Generally, regardless of gender, they were collectively referred to as the phoenix. Legend has it that the phoenix's feathers were thousands of times more beautiful than a peacock's feathers. Furthermore, it had the mystical power of immortality and rebirth from the ashes. Because of this, another beautiful idiom came into being, which was called Phoenix's Nirvana. In short, the phoenix was the supreme existence among all the mythical birds. It was immortal and had eternal life. These myths and legends, Yu Qianqiu was very familiar with them in his previous life. Therefore, he immediately denied the possibility that this black-feathered crow was a phoenix. He couldn't help but think of the Wu clan's auction. At that time, it was said that the glowing egg was the egg of a vermilion bird. Could this crow be the legendary vermilion bird? That's not possible. Yu Qianqiu shook his head slightly and denied this guess. Although he wasn't familiar with the legend of the vermilion bird, he knew that it was a hybrid descendant of the phoenix. It was an existence that could almost be compared to the golden-winged roc among the mythical birds. How could it look like a crow? *T. But looking at this tattered crow's eye-catching appearance, it was definitely not an ordinary bird. He didn't know where it came from. At this moment, the crow on Wu Lishue's shoulder suddenly opened its beak and let out a cry. The cry was loud and clear, like a desolate rustling, piercing through the clouds. As a result, Yu Qianqiu, who was close to it, was in a miserable state. He was so shaken that his eyes rolled back, and he almost fell down the stairs. In his daze, he felt a hand supporting him. He subconsciously felt that it was Wu Lishue who had lent him a hand. Yu Qianqiu, what happened to you? Amidst the anxious cries, Yu Qianqiu shook his head and gradually woke up. However, his ears were still buzzing. He squeezed out a smile with a pale face and shook his head at Wu Lishue, indicating that he was fine. Looking around, the flock of birds had already disappeared, leaving only colorful feathers on the ground. In the distance, there was a dense group of flying figures escaping into the forest. Then, he looked at the crow on Wu Lishue's shoulder. It was staring at him with a mocking gaze, as if it was a punishment for him calling it a crow. Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. It was really hard to believe that this little guy would scare people the moment he opened his mouth. It was really amazing with a single brilliant feat. The power seemed to be almost on par with Bai Changchun's cold snort. Or maybe it was the result of him standing too close. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have imagined that the sound that almost knocked him unconscious was the result of this stupid crow's cry. Then, he saw Wu Lishue holding his arm with a worried expression, but it seemed like she was completely fine. Yu Qianqiu immediately glared at the crow angrily. This was definitely revenge. Otherwise, how could Wu Lishue, whose cultivation was lower than his, be completely fine while he was almost knocked unconscious? Yu Qianqiu and the crow on Wu Lishue's shoulder looked at each other. The former's eyes were filled with anger, while the latter's eyes were filled with ridicule. Little did they know that Wu Sihai and the others in the sentry tower in the distance were staring at them in shock. The crow's cry had driven away all the birds, immediately attracting their attention. Based on their experience, they could immediately tell that the crow on Wu Lishue's shoulder was not an ordinary crow. At the very least, it was not an ordinary crow. It might even be a legendary spirit beast that was in existence comparable to a soul formation cultivator. Could it be a spirit beast that Yu Qianqiu gave to Shui Er? Wu Sihai was overjoyed and immediately confirmed his guess. This was because he naturally knew whether Wu Lixue had a spirit beast or not. The only possibility was that Yu Qianqiu had given it to her. Otherwise, how could he be so generous as to give a spirit beast to someone else so casually? Thinking of this, Wu Sihai's heart was filled with relief. It seemed like it was not in vain that he had tried to matchmake Shui Er with him. This brat still had a bit of a conscience. You've all seen what happened with your own eyes. The news that should be kept under wraps must be kept under wraps. The reason for announcing it to the public must also be comprehensive. Don't make a fuss that can't be justified. Wu Sihai turned around and said to an elder beside him. The joy on the elder's face had yet to fade. What a joke! With a spirit beast in the family, it was equivalent to having a soul formation cultivator. He immediately cupped his hands and said, "Rest assured, Patriarch. I'll make the arrangements immediately." With that said, he quickly flew away. Yu Qianqiu's furious gaze shifted away from the crow. He thought to himself, just you wait, there's a chance to settle this score. With a flash, he rushed back to his room. Wu Lixue stroked the crow on his shoulder and stuck out his tongue, as if saying, "You've caused trouble." Then he also rushed back to his room. As soon as he returned to his room, he saw Yu Qianqiu lying on the bed with his legs crossed. It seemed like he was still angry. Wu Lixue secretly smiled, knowing that he was in a bad mood after suffering a setback. He didn't disturb him, and continued to play with the precious crow on his shoulder. Ah! Wu Lixue suddenly cried out in pain. Yu Qianqiu suddenly looked over. It would have been fine if he didn't look, but as soon as he did, he became furious. As it turned out, when Wu Lixue had been playing with the crow on his shoulder, the crow had suddenly pecked at Wu Lixue's finger, causing the skin on Wu Lixue's finger to break, and the crow had been licking the blood from its beak, seemingly savoring the taste of the blood. "I'll kill you!" Yu Qianqiu roared angrily, and in a flash he stretched out his claws, wanting to grab the crow on Wu Lixue's shoulder and crush it to death. "Don't!" Wu Lixue was not having it. Instead, he used his hands to block the crow on his shoulder. "Lixue, let me kill it. This stupid bird doesn't look like a good thing. It's bloodthirsty the moment it's born. It's very strange. It's not safe for you to keep it by your side." Yu Qianqiu was furious, as if he wanted to take revenge on Wu Lixue. "No, it didn't do it on purpose," Wu Lixue pleaded. "Yu Qianqiu, can you let it go? It's just a little skin on my finger. It's really not a big deal. Lixue, don't be stubborn. Let me kill." Yu Qianqiu couldn't finish his sentence. The crow on Wu Lixue's shoulder had closed its eyes that were filled with intelligence, and the 3 colorful feathers on its head were actually emitting a faint rainbow glow. What was it doing? Wu Lixue also noticed this strange phenomenon, and both of them were stunned. There were too many miraculous things about this crow, and it was beyond their imagination. Yu Qianqiu's anger disappeared just like that. His finger slowly scratched his chin, and he thought to himself, could it be that this stupid bird is evolving? Not long after, the crow's eyes suddenly opened, and it stared at Yu Qianqiu with a piercing gaze. With a clear and melodious voice, it shouted, "What did you call me? How dare you call this god a stupid bird?" The two of them almost fainted when they heard it. Yu Qianqiu's face was filled with disbelief. He pointed at it and stammered, You were the one who spoke just now." The crow shook its head in anger. "That's nothing. This god was born to understand any language. Anything that can speak in this world, as long as it offers a drop of blood for this god to extract, this god will be able to learn their language in no time. But don't misunderstand, this god is incomparably noble. I won't extract just anyone's blood. For example, your blood is not worthy for this god to extract." The person it was looking down on was naturally Yu Qianqiu. Chapter 670. However, Yu Qianqiu did not seem to mind its words of disdain, instead staring at it suspiciously, sizing it up. The crow snorted coquettishly. What's wrong? Dumbfounded. You've never seen a bird that can talk like this god, right? Wu Lixue was dumbfounded, her hands covering her mouth in shock. Yu Qianqiu raised an eyebrow, his gaze sweeping across the crow's chest and between its legs. Suddenly he asked weakly. From your voice, it sounds like a woman's voice. Are you a female? Shameless fellow. The crow's voice was filled with humiliation, its wings covering its chest, looking like a woman who had discovered that she was being peeped on by a man. Haha. Yu Qianqiu laughed evilly, waving his hands. Don't worry. Even if you're a female, I'm not interested in birds. A whole body of black fur. There's nothing much to look at. The crow immediately buried its head into Wu Lixue's ear, saying, Shuer, you have to control your man. It called me Shuer. Wu Lixue felt like she was dreaming. Looking at the wound on her finger, she was speechless. Haha, you really act like a woman. Yu Qianqiu circled around Wu Lixue twice, but he was actually looking at the bashful bird. He clicked his tongue and said, If I hadn't seen the scene of your birth, I would have thought that Brother Ba was mimicking you. But there's nothing strange about that. What has this great master not seen before? Let alone a talking crow like you. This great master has even seen a talking dragon. The crow's head suddenly lifted up, looking at Yu Qianqiu curiously. You've seen a dragon? Is there a dragon here? That can't be. Dragons are supreme beasts. How could they appear in the mortal world so easily? This great master can say anything. But I don't know how to lie. Do you think I'll lie to a crow like you? Yu Qianqiu waved his hands disdainfully, asking. Tell me the truth. What kind of bird are you? You don't seem like an ordinary crow. Could it be the legendary vermilion bird? I'm warning you. You're not allowed to call this god a crow in the future. This god is incomparably noble. How can a crow compare to it? As for the vermilion bird, although it's a close relative of mine, it hasn't reached the level of a divine beast. At most, it's a top-notch immortal beast. After the crow waved its single wing in warning, it puffed up its chest and said proudly, Dragons are the supreme divine beasts among the beasts, and I am the supreme divine beast among the birds. My bloodline is incomparably noble. I don't drink unless it's morning dew. I don't eat unless it's tender bamboo. And I don't perch unless it's 1,000-year-old parasol tree. I am the phoenix. Phoenix? You said you're a phoenix? Yu Qianqiu pointed at the crow with his mouth agape. And after a moment of daze, he suddenly laughed out loud, rocking back and forth as he said, A black and swarthy crow like you dares to call yourself a phoenix? Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? You are not allowed to call this god a crow. The crow said angrily. What right do you have to say that this god is not a phoenix? Yu Qianqiu laughed so hard that tears almost flowed out of his eyes, waving his hands and saying, I'm laughing so hard my stomach hurts. Forget it, I'm not going to argue with you anymore. If you say you're a phoenix, then you're a phoenix. You dare to look down on me? The crow was really angry now. Wu Lixue listened to the conversation between the man and the bird, and the more she listened, the more confused she became, asking, What are you two talking about? What is a phoenix? Standing on her shoulder, the crow stumbled again, staring at her with an aggrieved look and said, Shuer, have you never heard of us phoenixes? Wu Lixue thought for a moment, her face full of confusion as she said, I only remember that the legends say that the vermilion bird is the supreme divine bird. But I've never heard of a bird called a phoenix. Yu Qianqiu was slightly taken aback, hearing Wu Lixue's words. He really had not heard of the legends of phoenixes in this world. And the only reason he knew about them was because he had the memories of his past life. The crow lowered its head weakly, muttering to itself. Could it be that no phoenix has ever descended in this world? That's impossible. My mother should have descended in this world before. Didn't she leave behind any legends? All of a sudden, it raised its head and stared at Yu Qianqiu, asking, Then how do you know about phoenixes? Wu Lixue also looked at him curiously. Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. He couldn't possibly say that he had lived two lives right. Immediately finding an excuse, he giggled and said, Maybe your mother looks just like you, and everyone else thinks of her as a crow. Who would care what a crow's name is? I've heard of a legend of a crow drinking water, but I don't think it's your mother. Nonsense. My mother is the most beautiful mythological beast, with 7 colored feathers, and a rainbow glow around her body, noble and peaceful. Anyone can tell that she is extraordinary with one look. And as long as someone has seen her before, with just one look, no one can forget her. She's much prettier than I am. The crow's first few words were said arrogantly, but by the time it finished, it was as if it was feeling inferior because of its ugly appearance. Yu Qianqiu was stunned on the spot. According to the crow's description of her mother, she really looked like the phoenixes he had heard of in his previous life. But thinking about it, he snorted coldly. Who are you trying to fool? When your mother gave birth to you, you were in the egg. How could you have seen your mother? Wu Lixue nodded in agreement with Yu Qianqiu's words, saying to the crow, Don't lie. There's nothing wrong with being a crow. I won't look down on you. The crow immediately fell onto Wu Lixue's neck, weakly getting up and explaining. Our phoenix race. The reason why our bloodline is so noble is because we are born with the bloodline of our parents. And we are immortal. That's why we are noble. The reason why I am like this now is because I am still a young phoenix. Although I only remember a small part of the memories my parents left me. But every time I go through a tribulation, I will be able to unlock another part of my memories. And my strength will increase greatly. And my appearance will become more beautiful. After going through 9 tribulations and being reborn 9 times, I will be able to unlock all my memories. And with my strength and memories, I will be able to find my way back to the divine realm. Is that so? Wu Lixue's voice was filled with doubt, obviously finding it hard to accept such a miraculous explanation. Just as the crow was speechless, Yu Qianqiu suddenly exclaimed, Phoenix's nirvana? Yeah. The crow cried out in surprise, flying onto Yu Qianqiu's shoulder, hugging his face and kissing him, jumping up and down excitedly. You know about the phoenix's nirvana? You know about the phoenix's nirvana? Then you definitely know what I mean. All of a sudden, it cried out in surprise again, flying into the air and slapping its claws against each other, as if it had stepped on dog poop. Am I that dirty? After eating my tofu, you still think I'm dirty? Damn. Yu Qianqiu's face immediately darkened. Wu Lixue giggled as she covered her mouth, and the crow landed back on her shoulder, saying apologetically to Yu Qianqiu, My phoenix clan is noble and unsullied. We do not drink unless it is morning dew. We do not eat unless it is tender bamboo. And we do not perch unless it is 1,000-year parasol tree. I was too excited just now. That's why I perched on your shoulder. Please don't misunderstand. I didn't mean anything else. Yu Qianqiu's face darkened, pointing at Wu Lixue and saying, Didn't you say that you do not perch unless it is 1,000-year parasol tree? Then why are you always on Shuer's shoulder? The crow shook its head and said, I don't know the reason, but I feel that Shuer is more noble than 1,000-year parasol tree. It's an instinctive choice, it shouldn't be wrong. Yu Qianqiu started, suddenly recalling the scene of Wu Lixue growing a pair of fantasy star wings on her back. He could roughly guess the reason, but it wasn't convenient for him to tell Wu Lixue now. Changing the topic, he said, According to what you said, since your mother came here before, why are there no legends of the phoenix here? Could it be that no one has ever seen her? Also, why did your mother give birth to you here? Couldn't she have just given birth to you in that divine realm? Why did she have to let you go through 9 tribulations to find your way home? Isn't your mother too cruel? Wu Lixue nodded repeatedly, also feeling that the crow's mother was too cruel. Who knew that the crow would ask in return? Who said that there are no legends of the phoenix here? Don't you know? Yu Qianqiu was speechless. This question was really hard to answer. The crow continued. Our phoenix race is immortal. If we could give birth to descendants at will, wouldn't we be able to see phoenixes everywhere? The birth of us phoenixes must follow the great Tao. Not just any phoenix can give birth to a descendant at will. I vaguely remember that the reason my mother came here was to follow the great Tao's will, to bring something here. As for me being born here, it is also because of the great Tao's will. And my birth means that this human world is about to. At this point, the crow immediately stopped talking. Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously. What is about to happen in this human world? Great change or great chaos? The crow choked for a moment, then shook its head and said, I can't say that. Revealing the heavenly secrets will result in a terrible fate. Bullshit heavenly secrets. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. In truth, he didn't believe in such things at all. He only believed in his own hard work. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes lit up as he asked, Do you remember what treasure your mother brought with her? The crow shook its head and said, I don't know, I just have this impression. Yu Qianqiu was very interested in that divine realm treasure. But who knew that this crow didn't know about it? He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Looking at the crow with waning interest, he shook his head and said, Phoenix? I didn't think that a young phoenix would look like a crow. After some understanding, he basically believed that this crow was a phoenix. If you call me crow again, I won't give swear face, I'll teach you a lesson. The crow said angrily. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly and said, Teach me a lesson? With just you. Even if you're a phoenix, you're just a little phoenix that hasn't grown up yet, and looks like a crow. You actually dare to shout at me. If I knew you were so heartless, I would have let you stay in the egg. I wouldn't have bothered to hatch you. This time the crow didn't get angry, instead asking curiously, You hatched me? How did you hatch me out of this world? For us phoenixes to break out of our eggs, we have to go through 9 days and 9 nights of intense fire. And even if the fire is small, it won't do. This can be considered as our first tribulation. Did you use fire to burn me for 9 days and 9 nights? How did you know this secret? Chapter 671. Do I need 9 days and 9 nights to hatch a broken egg like you? You think too highly of yourself. Yu Qianqiu said disdainfully, and with a flick of his finger, a green flame appeared. Yu Qianqiu said expressionlessly, 1 day is enough. He was trying to save face now, so he made it sound easy. But when he was messing around, it was not as easy as he said. Wah! The green flame of the 3 true fire. The crow cried out in surprise, flapping its wings and flying around the green flame on Yu Qianqiu's fingertip. Yu Qianqiu asked curiously, You recognize the 3 true fire as well? Although it looked like a crow, it was still a phoenix's descendant, and had good taste. The crow nodded excitedly as it flew, saying, Of course I recognize it. We phoenixes are naturally good at controlling fire. How could we not recognize the 3 true fire? As if to prove that it could control fire, as it flew, its black feathers suddenly glowed red, and in an instant, its entire body was covered in red flames. It flew around the room nimbly, the red flames supporting it like soft wings. At first glance, it really looked like a fire phoenix. Such a beautiful scene naturally attracted Wu Lishua's attention, and her eyes lit up. Yu Qianqiu saw that Wu Lishua liked it, and wanted to please her. The green flame disappeared from his fingertip, and with a flick of his palm, a red flame appeared, instantly forming a lifelike fire phoenix. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand lightly, and the fire phoenix flapped its wings, catching up to the crow and flying alongside it. Wah! The crow cried out in surprise again, retracting the flames on its body, and landing on Wu Lishua's shoulder. It stared at Yu Qianqiu in surprise and said, So you are also proficient in the art of controlling fire. It's just a little trick. Yu Qianqiu said modestly. He glanced at Wu Lishua, who was following the fire phoenix. He spread out his palm, and a green flame appeared. It instantly turned into a vivid and lifelike fire phoenix. It chased after the red phoenix. So beautiful. Wu Lishua couldn't help but praise. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, There's more. A black flame appeared in his palm, instantly forming a lifelike black fire phoenix. It flapped its wings and flew into the air, joining the flying team. 3 different colored fire phoenixes happily chased each other in the room. Wow! The crow cried out again. The black flame of the 3 true fire. There's even a purple one. What about the purple flame of the 3 true flames? I want to see. What are you looking at? There's nothing left. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, and 3 fire phoenixes flew over, collided with his body and disappeared. I want to see it. Let me see your purple fire phoenix. I beg you. Crow's pleading was futile. and she hugged Wu Lishua's neck, begging, "Shwe-er, help me beg your man. I want to see the purple flame phoenix." Wu Lishua obviously wanted to see it as well, and her eyes revealed a pleading look as she looked at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu shrugged his shoulders helplessly and said, "I've never seen a purple flame myself. Where would I get one to show you?" He then turned to Crow and chuckled. "Little Phoenix, do you know where to find purple flames?" This was the question he really wanted to ask. There should be purple flames in every realm, right? It's the source of power that supports every realm, and its power is very great. On the other hand, the green fire and black fire on your body shouldn't be flames of this world. Strange, how did you get your hands on them? The crow recalled and said. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand impatiently and said, "Don't tell me these useless things, just tell me where I can find them." "How would I know? I'm not familiar with this place," Crow said with some grievance. Yu Qianqiu immediately rolled his eyes at him, turning to look at Wu Lishua solemnly, as if he wanted to say something. Wu Lishua was a little nervous under his gaze and asked, "What is it?" "Lishua, I hope you can keep it secret." Yu Qianqiu pointed at Crow and said, "If anyone asks you anything about it, just say you don't know. You can push it to me, and say I gave it to you." Wu Lishua was taken aback, and asked, "I can't tell anyone? Do you want to hide it from my grandfather, parents, and brother?" Yu Qianqiu nodded, then shook his head and said, "It's not that I want to hide it from them. It's just that now isn't the time to tell them. For your safety, don't tell them for now. It's actually for their own good." I understand. I promise I won't tell anyone." Wu Lishua promised solemnly. Yu Qianqiu smiled happily, then stared at Crow, his face darkening, and said, "And you, if you don't want to get into trouble, it's best not to speak carelessly." "I understand. It's hard to predict a person's heart," Crow said happily. "Besides, do you think a noble phoenix like me is someone that anyone can make me open my mouth to speak?" Spirit Fong Valley was surrounded by 3 countries, and the weather was pleasant. It was verdant and lush throughout the 4 seasons, and there were many unknown flowers blooming in the mountains. Once the Allure Beauty and Yin Yu arrived, they fell in love with the environment. The 2 of them strolled along the mountain path to Spirit Fong Valley, and the ordinary people who came and went looking for medicine all looked at them with amazement. The Allure Beauty and Yin Yu had already changed into ordinary clothes. Otherwise, with their attire, especially the Allure Beauty's faintly discernible style, it would really be shocking. Even so, it still could not cover up the beauty of the ordinary people. In the shade on the right side of the platform, there was a long platform built with stone slabs. Lu Yanqing, dressed in a green robe, was personally arranging the 10 pots of blood orchids that Yu Qianqiu had given her. Behind her, the 9th brother Xian, who was in the early stage of soul formation, was staring at 3rd brother Xian with a gloomy face. After a long silence, he somewhat gritted his teeth and said, "3rd brother, I asked you to serve master. How can you leave master and go play alone?" 3rd brother Xian laughed and said, "9th brother, don't be anxious. If it wasn't for master's permission, how would I dare to go play? Don't stare at me. If you don't believe me, you can ask master." "All right, stop arguing." Lu Yanqing, who was fiddling with the blood orchids, said softly with her back facing the 2 of them, "Both of you leave. Do what you need to do." The 2 of them did not dare to say more. After bowing, they both retreated, but before 3rd brother Xian left, he looked at the 10 pots of blood orchids with a somewhat strange expression. And 9th brother Xian looked at Wen Lanfeng's back with some disgust. After serving the blood orchids, Lu Yanqing tilted her head to look at Wen Lanfeng standing on the edge of the cliff, and gently walked over. After standing side by side on the edge of the cliff, Lu Yanqing slowly took off the gauze hat on her head. Facing the rising sun, her beautiful face was suffused with a faint luster. She turned her head and asked softly, "When are you leaving?" As soon as Wen Lanfeng turned his head, the look in his eyes immediately froze. Strands of silky black hair were tied behind her lustrous ears. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, her white teeth were like shells, her red lips reflected the sun, and her eyes were clear and intelligent. The skin on her face was not made up, but the color was like the morning glow reflecting the snow, crystal white with a hint of rosy. Standing on the edge of the cliff, like an orchid in an empty valley, a pair of intelligent eyes staring at him, making him unable to help but palpitate. Lu Yanqing saw that he was staring at her foolishly, and could not help but frown slightly. She said unhappily, "When Lanfeng, please respect me." When Lanfeng suddenly came back to his senses, he awkwardly turned his head to the side and stared steadily into the distance. Although it was not the first time he saw Lu Yanqing's true appearance, he would always be stunned by her stunning appearance. Every time he saw her, he would never get tired of looking at her. "Do you hate me that much? Do you still think I am not sincere to you?" When Lanfeng said with a wry smile, "Is it not good to be friends between you and me?" Lu Yanqing asked. "Oh, be friends? I can't face you calmly as a friend." When Lanfeng shook his head, took a deep breath, turned his head again and solemnly asked, "Can you be honest with me? What kind of man do you like?" Chapter 672. Is it meaningful to ask such a question? Lu Yanqing shook her head slightly. Of course it is meaningful. When Lanfeng's gaze was firm, "At least it is meaningful to me. You should also understand that it is meaningful to me. I don't want to give up, and I won't give up. I still want to work hard, because you are the biggest reason why I stay in this world. Otherwise, do you know? If I concentrate on my cultivation, I'm afraid the day I ascend to the immortal realm is not far away." Lu Yanqing looked at him in surprise. "Are you confident that you can integrate the 7 spirits into your life spirit?" When Lanfeng smiled bitterly, "If I can get rid of my selfish thoughts, it should be within 100 years, or even less. Then I should congratulate you. The cultivation world has not had a cultivator ascend to the immortal realm for many years. You are the first person to carry on the past." Lu Yanqing smiled. "The first person to carry on the past?" When Lanfeng mocked himself. "You think too highly of me. Have you forgotten what the emissary of hell said? The real first person is Bai Changchun. His cultivation has long surpassed the soul formation final stage. I'm afraid that even if I ascend to the immortal realm, I will not be able to withstand a single blow from him." Lu Yanqing frowned and shook her head. "Why do you have to compare yourself to him? He is different from us. He is too ambitious." "What do you mean?" When Lanfeng was alarmed. "Are you suspecting that he has some ambition? That's why he has stayed in the human world and refused to ascend?" "No, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that he has any ambition. If he does, he doesn't need to hide it. No one in the cultivation world can stop him. He is too strong." Lu Yanqing hugged the gauze hat in her hand and sighed against the morning sun. "I said he is ambitious because I feel that he is different from us. Among us, some of us fight for power and profit to be the overlord. Some of us fight for a false name on the cultivation world's ranking list. He does not care about these things at all. I once heard Nongzhu say that Bai Changchun has been pursuing some illusory great path." "Great path?" When Lanfeng was surprised. "What is great path? What is great path? Why haven't I heard of it before?" Lu Yanqing shook her head and said, "I've never heard of it. I've asked Nongzhu, but Nongzhu doesn't know what it is. I just occasionally hear similar words from Bai Changchun's mouth, saying that it is likely to be a cultivation realm in Bai Changchun's ideal." When Lanfeng pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Let's not talk about him. His cultivation method is incredible. I've never heard of him using things like spirit stones. He's walking a different path from us. Maybe the path he's walking is the so-called Great Way. Those who walk different paths cannot make plans together. Even if you told us, it would be difficult for us to understand." For Bai Changchun, what he pursued was the Great Tao. But for me, what I pursued was you. I just want to know what kind of man you like. I hope you can point out a path for me to reach the other side. Don't force me, okay? A tired look appeared on Lu Yanqing's face. "I've never forced you." When Lanfeng's face also had a trace of a bleak smile as he said, "But too many things have happened in the cultivation world recently. I'm inexplicably a little worried. If I don't ask you this time, I'm afraid I won't have the chance to in the future. So please forgive me for being straightforward this time. Lu Yanqing turned back to look at him in surprise, as if she did not understand why he would suddenly say such obscure words. She slowly turned back to face the mountains under the sun, paused and said, I used to secretly like many men. This sentence suddenly made Wen Lanfeng a little dumbfounded. He looked at Lu Yanqing dumbfoundedly, as if he didn't know her. Lu Yanqing continued to say faintly, I've forgotten when it was. It's been too long. It seems that at that time, I hadn't been accepted by Master, or maybe I was still at the age of my first love. There are always some men who make my heart beat faster when I first see them. That feeling of shyness and admiration is really good. I was accepted by Master in a daze. After stepping into the cultivation world for a few years, I realized. Maybe it's because our spirit Fang Valley has always been practicing medicine and helping the world. I've seen too many secular people live and die. Unconsciously, I can no longer have any feelings for the short-lived secular people. I only have sympathy and help. When I cast my gaze towards the cultivation world, who would have thought that all I saw was mutual deception, unscrupulous competition, and incessant fighting and killing? I was born with an aversion to these things. This is the reason why I never made any choice. After listening to these words, when Lanfeng's dumbfounded expression finally eased, he nodded silently to show that he understood. Which woman didn't have the age of a young girl thinking of love? After a pause he said, Is there no man in the cultivation world that you like? There was one, but it can't be described as a man that I like. It's just that his great compassion made me admire him. There's no love between a man and a woman. If I have to choose one, I'd rather choose him, Lu Yanqing said frankly. When Lanfeng's pupils suddenly shrank, he racked his brains. But with his experience, he couldn't think of anyone in the cultivation world who deserved the title of great compassion. His chest rose and fell rapidly as he asked, Can you tell me who that person is? Do I know him? You know him? Lu Yanqing nodded. When Lanfeng could not suppress his excitement and asked, Who is it? You once challenged him to a duel because of my slip of the tongue. As a result, you were seriously injured by him and had to retreat for 100 years. Perhaps you and everyone else thinks I was just being perfunctory, but the fact is that I was able to say those words, and I had the same idea in my mind. I couldn't help saying them, and I ended up causing you trouble. Lu Yanqing's expression was very calm when she said this. It seemed that she had decided not to do anything to hide from Wen Lanfeng. However, when Wen Lanfeng heard this, he was stunned as if he was struck by lightning. After a long time he murmured, Bai. The person you're talking about is Bai Changchun. Then he came to his senses and shook his head again and again. No, this is your excuse. I have no opinion on what evaluation you used to describe Bai Changchun. But you said that Bai Changchun is merciful. Not to mention me. Everyone in the world knows that he is iron-blooded and ruthless. Countless people have died in his hands. How can he be worthy of the title of great compassion? What everyone sees may not be true. Maybe what I see is also an illusion. Lu Yanqing was silent and said, I just regret that I don't have Bai Changchun's ability. I practice medicine in Lingfang Valley, and the number of people I can save is limited. On the surface, Bai Changchun seems to be ruthless, but in fact, he has shocked the entire cultivation world. No one dares to act recklessly. Otherwise, the cultivation world will be in chaos. I'm afraid that the damage to the mortals in the secular world will be incalculable. I don't know how many people will die. When Lanfeng said in a deep voice, This may be your wishful thinking. Lu Yanqing smiled noncommittally and continued to say, In fact, with Bai Changchun's cultivation, there is no need to intervene in the affairs of the cultivation world. No one dares to look down on him. And he does not want to get anything from the cultivation world. Besides, he disdains to intervene in the affairs of the cultivation world. Then why does he make a move every time the cultivation world is in a state of panic? Haven't you noticed? As long as he makes a move, the chaos in the cultivation world will immediately calm down and restore the state of mutual checks and balances. The timing of his move is very subtle. Obviously, he is not killing for the sake of killing. When Lanfeng fell into deep thought when he heard this. After a long time he slowly said, As an outsider, you can see it more clearly than us. Your words remind me of the purpose that Bai Changchun set for the World Chamber of Commerce last time. Maybe you are right. Maybe the onlooker sees the game more clearly than the onlooker. Lu Yanqing faintly sighed and said, So I think Bai Changchun is merciful and compassionate. He saved the lives of the majority of the people in the world. But he is willing to bear the infamy behind his back. In fact, he does not care about the infamy behind his back. He is not the kind of person who acts for fame and profit. Compared to the people he saved, my Spirit Fong Valley can only be regarded as doing a good deed at most. But we have received the praise of the people in the world. But then again, although I admire his breadth of mind, I do not approve of his iron-blooded methods in the process of doing things. With his cultivation, there is no need to kill to stop killing. He could have done it more tactfully. There is no need to kill so many people. When Lanfeng's heart was suddenly enlightened, he understood that Lu Yanqing only admired Bai Changchun and did not really like him. But there were some things that he did not want to argue with Lu Yanqing. Although the onlooker knew some things better than the people in the game, there were also some things that he did not know. Now that he thought about it, if Bai Changchun did not use iron-blooded methods, who in the cultivation world would be afraid of him? Relying on words to reason, who would listen to him when faced with benefits? He was afraid that Bai Changchun would not be able to deter them even if he wanted to. In the end, more people might die. So Bai Changchun is not the man you like. When Lanfeng had regained his calmness, he pondered and said, But what I want to know is, what kind of man do you like? I want to look in the mirror and see how far I am. Before answering your question, I want to ask you a question. Lu Yanqing turned around and stared at him solemnly without blinking and asked, You said before that you could not face me with the mentality of a friend. Is it because of my appearance? When Lanfeng was speechless, the reason why he could not face Lu Yanqing with the mentality of a friend was not because of his appearance, but because he really liked Lu Yanqing. After so many years of effort, he could not convince himself to let it go. But he did not deny that Lu Yanqing's peerless appearance was one of the reasons, because every time he saw her, his heart would palpitate. How could he be a friend? If you don't speak, then you admit it. Lu Yanqing sighed faintly and turned to look into the distance again. With a trace of melancholy in her eyes, she slowly said, Sometimes I hate my appearance, but it also makes me understand what I need. In fact, I am not aloof or narcissistic. No matter how beautiful I am essentially an ordinary woman. I don't have high requirements for the man I like. It can even be said that I have no requirements. No requirements. When Lanfeng could not believe it and said, Then what are you waiting for? Lu Yanqing smiled faintly and said, If I have to say that I have requirements, I just hope that he can treat me as an ordinary woman. He can face me calmly and let me know that I am not the so-called first beauty in the world, but an ordinary woman. I don't care how rich he is, or how handsome he is, or how high his cultivation is, or how noble his status is. I don't even care if he's a good person or a bad person. I just want to be like an ordinary woman and find a man who can make my heart palpitate, a man who can make me give everything. Is this request really too much? That you're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.